All right, welcome to the Late Age Dominions 5 multiplayer showdown. And this is going to be our final podcast talking about how the game went for all of us and the inevitable victory of Sabouts. So let's just go ahead and introduce ourselves real quickly.
Okay, well, I'm Daz Tactic. I'm playing as Man in the game, in the sort of middle of the map of the war room as such. It's in through here, so I'm just sort of zooming in on the screen. So anyway, that's I didn't win.
And hey guys, this is Lucid. I was playing Mictlan.
I'm Satis, and I'm also Nucrium.
Hello, my name is Sabouts. You can also call me God. I prefer that as well, but I played Pythium.
Yes, the pants creator.
Hey everybody, this is Sakane or Utgard, and I apologize. I'm on a crappy cell phone in the middle of the wilderness, so hopefully you'll be able to hear me throughout this podcast.
All right, and finally, I'm Wadestar. I played Midgard, and the two players who we don't have with us today are Dwarf Comic, who played Pangea, and Battle Moose, who played Utgard, and they just had they had some. Oh, I'm sorry, Olm. Thank you, now I'm all thrown off my game. And Battle Moose, who played Ulm, and they couldn't make it because we are recording on New Year's/New Year's Eve, so they had some prior commitments. But we're going to go ahead and persevere and get started. So we're going to do things a little differently from the last two podcasts. We're not quite as organized because, again, of holiday scheduling. But we're going to start out with just a general question kind of going over the entirety of the game. And that first question is to discuss kind of what was our strategy for winning in the game. And with the caveat that strategy may have had to change in response to certain events throughout the course of the game. But that's where we're going to start out with Daz.
Okay, well, I guess my strategy actually started in the Middle Age because I actually thought that Man was overpowered in the Late Age from what I'd actually heard. And so I thought that if I turtled for the first 30 turns, I'd then be able to ruffle stomp for the last 10 turns. So that was actually my vague strategy. And I actually thought that was going to be something that I'd find fairly easy in this particular game. But God, this game was hard. And so I ended up turtling too long, and then my ruffle stomp didn't actually ruffle stomp at all. So it was sort of really, completely went out the window. It was, big lessons for me about how to play the game, I think.
Well, you did kill a lot of Vikings.
Oh, not really. I mean, it was not as many as I wanted to.
Who among us cannot say the same?
He subcontracted the Viking killing to
Subcontracted to Utgard.
Yeah. I paid good gold for those heads.
Did you actually pay him?
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
that's funny.
Which was just insulting to me. But go ahead, Lucy. Go ahead, Lucy.
So playing Mictlan, I didn't spawn near many of the level 2 or 3 thrones. So I didn't really think about it in the early game. I don't really, usually in my games, I don't think about thrones until pretty late in the game. And I'll admit, when I went after Ulm, I didn't really think about the fact that he had no thrones, even though he announced that in a message. So, when it got to be the point where I was kind of winning the war against Ulm, and I was looking at what thrones I could take, which was probably starting around turn 30 is when I started thinking about it, I realized that there was really no reasonable way to get to 7. I would have to war like 4 different nations to get 7. And, I ended up, my play was to go for Drake's Rest, so that was the one I took from Utgard at the very end, to go for the one I ended up direly trying to get from Pythium, which is 20 in the lake. He changed the units he had there. He got the Leo Campus at the last minute, and that completely messed up my strategy for how I was going to take it from him. And I didn't have time to think of a new strategy, I guess. and then to get the last one from Pangea at 130. So I think the wheel, if I got all those, it would have been 6, so it wouldn't have been 7, but I was confident if I had 6 and I could somehow hold on to them, that I would at least have a chance at winning. So that was kind of my plan. It didn't, it might have worked, except for it didn't work.
Except that Cataclysm happened, and then, of course, not the Cataclysm we were expecting.
Yeah, and then damn Pythium. Ugh.
Yeah.
So I
Go
guess
ahead,
Nuclear?
Nook.
Yeah, I guess my strategy early on was, knowing that I'm not the most experienced Dominions player, was to try to was my only hope. So I was a bit aggressive, and I was throwing out some messages, hoping to get folks at war so that I could kind of good. It didn't work out. Initial plan. Later on, though, I actually had for a moment, I had a plan of victory, but that was my initial thought: is just try to get things, make as many wars as I could between you guys, so that I could try to pull a Pythium, sneak in, and grab the.
All right, and go ahead, Sabouts.
Well,
How was your strategy, and how much did your strategy reflect what you ended up doing?
you know, my strategy changed probably several times throughout, and I'm sure some of you guys know because you've watched it by now. I started off the game, didn't really have a set out goal. Pythium late age is usually a terrible nation, so it's really hard. The Hydras are really good, but aside from that, there's not a whole lot there, especially when you're competing in the late age against a lot of nations that have really, really strong blood magic. You know, I kind of started out, wasn't really sure. I did like the starting area that I had gotten, but finding the 3-point throne and being so close to it was kind of the part where it changed my whole level of thinking on it. So then at that point, my strategy shifted from I don't know what to do to I was going to turtle really hard, kind of like Das. And I was just going to hold the 3-point throne for as long as I could, make sure nobody else could get it so that there would be no victor, and maybe hold it to the Cataclysm. A lot easier to defend one 3-point throne versus everybody else trying to defend multiple thrones. I thought maybe my chances of victory through that would be sound. The plan to take the water thrones was sort of a last minute plan. It kind of fell into place because my ability, I was surrounded by water, so I wanted to make sure that I took a lot of those water provinces. So early on, I was already crafting a lot of rings of underwater breathing and water manuals, trying to get my troops in the water. And then it just so happened that I had a bunch of those, and kind of looking at the map where all of a sudden a light bulb went off, I was like, I can get these 2 underwater thrones that nobody's taken, and that would actually secure victory. That's what I did.
Well, actually, Nukrim had taken them, to be fair.
Yeah.
Playing the thrones, though.
Guarded them well, he did.
I looked at him for real hard.
I remember begging you and Nukrium to take some of those water provinces so that I wouldn't have to be neighbors with Mictlan.
I don't think anybody wanted to be neighbors with Mictlan. I saw him like destroying Ulm and heading my way. I'm like, oh my god.
Look, guys, I was the most friendly, trustworthy neighbor out there.
Second to Midgard.
Actually, no, you were trustworthy, Lucid, and Wadestar, you were not trustworthy at all.
You guys, this reputation is undeserved. I was a dedicated ally to Lucid in his battle against Ulm.
The only ones that I've actually could trust all the way through the game, and this is going to be funny for you guys, was Ulm, Lucid, and Sabouts. There you go.
Was so close to attacking you, Daz.
Yeah, I know. I watched your videos.
Next turn I was going to get you, and then Pangeo hit me. And I was like, oh, there goes that plan.
That's true. I was able to trust Nukrium throughout the entire game. But anyway, we should get into the trust issues a little bit later.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead, Sakne.
Yeah, so I came in about halfway, but to kind of touch, Lucid said, like, normally we'd be focusing on the thrones from the get-go, But with the game settings as they were, like it was right from the beginning. And unfortunately, in Utgard's position, there was only a throne that had not yet even been claimed. It was still the Indies. That's the Drake's Rest that Lucid and I ended up fighting over later on. Then there was like Satis had a throne that was on the border with throne that I, at the end of the game I kind of went for, but that was obtainable. And then there was the 1 point throne that Midgard had on my shore for some random reason, and we ended up fighting over that. But other than those 3 points, and those are three thrones in different areas, there was nothing else. It was the underwater end, like that I was fighting with Pythium. I was neighboring Satis, and Satis had taken the other province, and I felt like I didn't have a good sense of Satis's, war with Pangaea, that I didn't have a way to permanence him. He could take it any time. So that was reachable, but so I didn't really have a way to win. So I felt that was a similar situation as Lucid described, maybe 5 points and a horrors to happen and see if I could hold off that way. I know we can get into Diplo later, but I'm going to go for his whole nation. But in this kind of game, it's not about taking over nations. You got to get thrones, and the other thrones were really. I know by watching videos, going to go like underwater to get the 3 point throne, but like I never had. I mean, I have water access, but I never had like. It takes a lot of equipment to get giants to go underwater, guys. A lot of underwater breathing, and I never even. Now maybe I should have, but I never even conceived of that. I didn't get the 3 point throne. So I kind of felt in a similar situation where I had points within range, and I just had to wait it out until.
Oh, you're cutting out a little bit there, Sakani, at the end. And just a reminder to the viewers too, Sakani is joining us from a undisclosed remote location. So forgive us if there are some sound issues.
Yeah, I was giving the secret signal that it was cutting out for me. So
okay,
but you didn't see it. On Discord, we've got little secret signals of Sakwane to let him know when it is cutting out.
All right, so I guess I'll discuss my strategy initially.
I can't help it.
Oh, there you are. Yeah, no problem. We got the gist of it, I hope.
Yeah, I think so.
Anyway, so for my strategy to win the game was initially I didn't have one. I just wanted to focus on expansion and secure as strong a position in the game as possible, which went kind of mixed. Not being able to, I didn't have very good scouts, so I didn't know how I was comparing to other people, but I was definitely assuming Mictlan was expanding out of control. And then once I realized that, what was it called? The Inner Throne.
On
what was
High
that
Watch?
called? High Watch? Yeah. Once I realized High Watch was 2, and I had the Throne of Bones, which was 1, and then I was able to snatch that North Province from preempt Utgard there. That's when I realized, and I figured out where the Throne of the Pantocrator was. I was like, okay, I actually don't need to go to war with anybody if I can just hold on and take over the Pantocrator throne. And I was like, I just need a little bit more research to do it with. And that's when I built up I was trying to secure that northern part. And I was like, I'm just hoping that Utgard will be distracted by the war with Mictlan long enough for me to do it. But at the same time, I was like, I know this is going to rankle him, though, having this territory, even though we had no communication. And that's also about the time when I Seen You Before was staling turns, I think. So, yeah, anyway, it was a precarious position. But then I was also trying to play this game where I wanted to hold off Lucid a bit as well, and also try to keep people from, pivoting and starting to declare war on me, which is why I was dragging my feet into a war with Lucid. And so, for example, the Witch Grove, the throne of the Second Age, even though I claimed that throne, that was in no way, shape, or form part of my strategy. I just went over there and took it because I wanted to see what Lucid had. And I didn't even invade Mictlan because the Throne of Bones did that for me. And so I was just hanging on and waiting to see how Mictlan responded to the neutrals in the province. And that's the only reason why I don't think I ever had much of a battle against Mictlan. But that bit me in the ass because then that provoked Ulm into attacking and destroying my entire army instead of focusing on Mictlan, who I considered to be still a bigger threat. And then after that, I never was able to really get back on top of things. I kept hoping that I might be able to take the throne of the Pantocrator, but I was kind of responding to Ulm the way things had gone in the Middle Age game, where it was like once people declare war on you like that, then they're kind of out for you. So that's when I just decided to change sides, and I'll get into that later. But yeah, anyway, I was just hoping then at that point I needed more time to try to go back to, because my prophet was dead, to try to go back to building an army that could potentially take the throne of the Pantocrator. And then at that point, it really was a race against time before Pythium secured the throne and started to build a fortress there, and before Utgard decided to take the throne that I had that was in his sphere of influence. And the timing didn't work out. Like I went over and investigated the throne of the Pantocrator, and by then Sabaoth had already secured it. And it's kind of like, well, at that point, my strategy was just to hold on to as much as I could. And at that point, I wasn't really trying to go for a throne rush, even though you guys kept talking about it in your videos to my angst. But anyway, that was my strats.
Rush.
Well, for all we knew, there could have been 400 or 500 elves lurking in any province.
I know, that was kind of funny because most of those elves were dead. But anyway, I got a kick out of that though. That actually worked to my advantage, like having you guys worry about where my armies were. I was like, well, they're in the ground at the moment. But anyway,
nobody knew that.
yeah. Anyway, so should we go ahead and move on and talk about the kind of the alliances we had and our trust issues, so to speak, particularly in that early game with Mictlan?
Yep. Do you want me to kick off from my side?
Go ahead, yeah.
I guess so. We're really just talking about the early game at this stage, aren't we?
Yeah.
So now, like my subscribers had warned me that Lucid was going to be sort of like the best player that we were up against at that stage, followed by I've seen you before. So I was sort of on the lookout for Utgard and for Mictlan right from the very, very start, and I was praying I wasn't next to either one of them. And when I found Mictlan was above me, that's when I just started swarming spies, just trying to find out as much as I possibly could. And so for me, I knew I couldn't afford to be friends with Mictlan because I just thought I was going to get smashed if and I knew that I didn't have any thrones. That was also why I gave up the inner throne to Midgard in diplomacy. I gave up to Nukrium. I gave the lower throne at 66 as well in diplomacy, just to try to sort of keep security on those borders. Ulm, we also had nothing really to gain against each other. So it was only Mictlan that by that stage that I had to then focus on, and I knew I couldn't do it alone. So that was sort of why I then started to try to get like an alliance against Mictlan, and but it didn't work. I guess we'll talk about that because that's more the mid game, isn't it? Really, but at that stage I was. I had heaps of forces actually all snuck in through Mictlan's territories, and I never got to actually pull the trigger properly. It was because of the nap that I had with Mictlan, and so I did honour the nap, and God, it was tempting not to. It was so tempting not to, because I could have got the Throne of Pestilence, I think, before there was a castle built there.
And just to our casual viewers, nap being a non-aggression pact.
Yeah, I didn't understand exactly how they worked, and so I stalled initially because I was waiting for Utgard and Ulm to start fighting, and Midgard, who never did, by the way.
I kind of provoked a fight,
but not in the way that we all wanted it to. But no, the way it turned out, it was actually I'm really quite happy the way it sort of not the way that it turned out from the diplomatic sense, but I was really scared that Mictlan was going to ruffle stomp somebody, and I guess in the end it was Ulm that ended up sort of catching the ire of Mictlan. But and
Thank
yeah, it
God.
was, yeah. Yeah, that's why I didn't want to start next to Mictlan or Utgard, to be honest. But yeah, so in the early days, when I first saw what those sacreds could do, it was like I tried so many different things. I had so many different test things. I even had like secret test sessions with my Patreons where we'd actually spend like a couple of hours making test beds to actually put different forces against the sacreds of Mictlan, and there was nothing I could do against them. Like I was just focusing on like I'd have 5 sacreds on one side, and then try to spend like the equivalent amount of money on the other side from my side, and then I would try doubling that, then quadrupling it, and nothing I could do would actually stop those sacreds. And so for me, it was like I had to go and make alliances and make. And find those alliances. And so very early on, I knew that Ulm was going to be a trustworthy neighbour because we had nothing to gain by going against each other, and we had to support each other because he was on the north of Mictlan, I was on the south of Mictlan. And then when I seen you before in Sakwane, basically with Utgard, that was like, okay, well then that's the other side. And then I was just hoping that by giving up the inner throne to Midgard, that he would then honour all the agreements and then help us as well. And just so, yeah, and like it was just something I thought, I don't know how to stop them, so I'm going to have to rely on everybody else to do that.
Okay, I guess I'll go next. So as I thought I did a pretty good job with early game Diplo. You know, little did I know, but
That's right. When you play with us, everything's off the table, so to speak.
Yeah, you know, normally you want to get a non-aggression pact. Like, ideally, best case is you get a non-aggression pact with all your neighbors except maybe the one you want to attack. And I had done that with everyone except Pangea and Utgard. And that's because I wasn't sure which one of those I wanted to attack yet. So anyway, I did that, and then all of a sudden, you know, there's this alliance declared against me, which seems at the beginning to include Midgard, which I wasn't quite sure about. Because they didn't really have a border with me.
Yeah, they were definitely included.
Yeah, they were.
I was genuinely concerned, genuinely looking for a way to contribute.
Right. And
by stabbing us in the back.
No, we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
So I thought everything was good, and I didn't watch all of Battle Miss's channel or videos, but. I still don't know his thought process behind ending the nap with me without like giving any warning. So that's still kind of a mystery to me. I need to go back and maybe research that. Since he's not here, hopefully one of you know what happened, what he was thinking about.
It was always the plan was he was actually the trigger for the attack, and so he had told particularly Utgard and myself that there was 3 turns to the attack, 2 turns to the attack. And so I was timing my nap based on his information. And that's also the time when I seen you before sort of stayed a few turns. And so the war sort of started with Utgard, but really it was going to be, but Ulm was the one saying, I've got this in the bag. And so it was sort of like I was waiting for him. And so he was, but why he didn't actually say anything, I guess just the element of surprise. Yeah, I'm not sure. And to be honest, I was so tempted to also stop my nap 1 turn before that, and but then actually once again, people in my Patreon actually told me, look, Lucid's honourable; he would never do it himself, and so I thought, okay, well then I won't do it either. But it was so tempting to go 1 turn earlier for me.
Yeah.
I can't speak for Ulm, but I can speak as one of the members of the group from the previous playthrough and in this game as well. At a certain point, if somebody is such a threat, then it's kind of like, well, I can honor a nap and lose the game, then I'll break the nap, or I'll betray it or something like that. So
I think it was too early for that call.
Yeah, that's not the situation we were in.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I won't debate that. And since he's here, he can't answer to that. But he may have perceived it that way because a lot of us, and again, only speaking for myself, were really, really very concerned about your power level. And without seeing the score graphs, that if we'd seen the score graphs, we might have been less concerned. But like I figured you were maybe twice as big as I was at the time until like we finally got to see the score graphs at the end. So he may have similarly felt that if he didn't strike now, that it was a game over, and there's no honor if you're dead, so to speak.
I don't think that was the case either. Actually, I think it was opportunity. I think it's from the diplomacy that I certainly had with Ulm. Ulm was very confident that he was going to be able to handle the sacreds. I was really unsure about that because I didn't think when I saw them. Basically, for me, it was each sacred was worth 4 units. 4 normal units from what I could sort of tell because of the quickness. You got double strikes and you've also got the luck. So you've also got the shape changing as well. So it actually was 8 times. You had 8 times. Each sacred was worth 8 units. And that scared the crap out of me.
Well, and that may be true too, because I remember commenting saying that I've kind of assumed that the reason Ulm even attacked me in Witchgrove, even without any prior diplomacy or anything like that, I kind of made the assumption that he thinks he can take on Mictlan, and he's just going to take this opportunity to kill my army, so I don't get any of Mictlan. So
I don't think he did it for that reason, actually. I think you taking Witchgrove was such a massive threat to everybody that the fact that he did it, I really thought good on you for doing it because you had to do it. Where you were positioned, you didn't have to take. You were so close to winning if you got the throne of the Pantocrator at that time, and he knew that because we've been communicating about it as well, I think, and because I saw your scout go into the throne of the Pantocrator. And so I thought, okay, you know it's a level 3. I know it's a level 3. So I was letting other people know because you were the one that could grab it. And, that was, for me, that was like he had to do that. He had no choice.
Well, we'll come back to Witchgrove. But anyway, do you have anything more you wanted to add, Lucid?
Maybe just that decision from Ulm to kind of break his nap with me, it really influenced my play later because there was really nothing at that point. One of the problems with Mictlan is they're really slow on the map, so you're basically map move 1. So if I committed to a war with anyone else and then got backstabbed, it was going to really hurt. So ultimately, the fact that he did that and then the coalition didn't pan out resulted in the fact that I basically had to war him. So anyway, kind of an interesting series of events that ultimately resulted in his destruction. If he had ended his nap honorably like Daz did, who knows, I might have gone after Daz instead. But
yeah, well, I didn't have any thrones either, and that was sort of, I thought, when I was looking at it, I thought, okay, my castles are going to be a bit harder to siege, so I thought I could even sort of bunker down a little bit if you did attack me, and just once again, just through diplomacy, try to get everybody else to keep on going up against you. So I didn't mind being the target. If you came after me, it was as long as I had allies. So I wasn't too concerned if you came after me, but I, of course, preferred that you didn't.
All right.
I wanted to add something because, I just wanted to put something in because I wasn't there in the early game, right? But if I had been there, I could definitely say that I would never have joined. As Utgard, I would never have joined this coalition against Mictlan. It's really guys speak about it because, on the one hand, Lucid's a great player, right? So you're all afraid of him, but also so he took, trash scales, like the god's name was Full Measure, right? So even you don't have to watch the video, it's like a trash scale, insane bless, even without scouting. So
speak for yourself there. I had to watch the videos. Right. Go ahead, Dosakani.
So my point is that he's got a crazy bless, and he's going to be super strong in the early, and he's got garbage scales. And so if you're afraid of him, like any nation, for example, as me as Utgard, giants go, against his bless. So I would never want to fight him until I got like some key research, and then maybe I would have a chance, right? Like the power curve doesn't match up. So it's really like Das and the others, like, oh, he's really scary. Let's all team beginning of the game, but it's at the beginning of the game that where the crazy bliss, and a bunch of sacreds is going to trounce all your regular troops. It's only once you have your, important, some important research that maybe you could have taken him on. So it was really interesting that, I don't blame you for being afraid of Lucid as a player. I'm afraid of him too, but I wouldn't, that choice, to me, like, that's the way you're speaking. It sounds like I would have just hoped to Diplo out of being the target and just let him kill somebody else. And then, he's a hard target for you. Like, it would have been easier to go after somebody else. It's just my gut feeling. Anyways,
I think from my perspective,
I got into the game right away.
Yeah, from my perspective, to answer that, I was concerned he was going to go on a throne rush. I thought the game was going to be over like in 15 turns. And that's why, and seeing what his units could do, I thought, okay, that's what he's doing. He's just going to march anywhere he likes, take over whatever he wants, and get it, inside 20 turns. So that was certainly
fair enough. But the geography made that impossible, right? He had no thrones close to him, so that was. In hindsight, we know this, but even early on, like, the geography was terrible for him. He had no thrones. And so, that would have required him conquer 3 whole nations. Even at the end of the game, after he'd taken over Ulm, he wasn't able to. Anyway, just an interesting perspective.
Let's bring Nukrium into the conversation here too before we continue with this particular back and forth. So, Nukrium, how did you feel about your alliances in the game? Friend Nukrium, lizard friends, lizard allies of Midgard.
Friends with everyone. That was my play, except for Pangea. I didn't have a lot of contact with Mictlan information to make friends. I got sent up a couple messages about this coalition beat that was brewing, while saying I was in the coalition, so I was try to be everyone's buddy, so then no one would mess with me, was kind of my strategy. I was really hoping that there would be a big war, because then that would allow me to walk into Man's western border. And I was really hoping he would help me with Pangea as well. But sort of ease the border friction on my side. That's all I really did with Mictlan pretty much the whole game, was what few messages I sent him was fetch tacky, that kind of thing. Sometimes they were made up.
I didn't realize that you betrayed me. I actually always assumed it was Midgard, and so I blamed Midgard.
I watched one of your videos, and I think I saw you were blaming Midgard for it.
Yeah, and it was you.
Blaming me for what? What was it?
For telling Mictlan.
Oh, yeah, that's right. For telling. Well, because I kept getting irritated with you and reflecting it in my messages to you. I was like, what are you accusing me of giving, like, Mictlan information? I'm just telling them what should be obvious, which is that you're forming an alliance against them. And it's like, that's not helpful or harmful to us or the coalition. It's like,
but it was Nukrium the whole time.
Yeah. And it was Nukrium who informed me of the backstabbing treachery, this silent shadow coalition against Midgard the whole time, when you were trying to tell me to do this and go there and attack Mictlan, whatnot.
About Man attacking you, I made up.
No, that was missing from. That was missing from. I never had any intention of attacking you.
I made that all up.
Ever.
And part of the problem too was like, well, and just to make
that's clear, so classic. That's great.
And just to make this clear to, like, Sakane and Lucid here, like, there's a lot of baggage that's being carried over from the Middle Age. So I'll just put that out there as well, where there was also a shadow coalition against Vanheim in the late game, brought about by the usual suspect, as I recall it. And also, like, Ulm being exceptionally untrustworthy, and now I'm in an alliance, a quote-unquote alliance once more with Ulm, and just how that didn't quite sit right with me. So anyway, but I'll come back to that later. But let's go ahead, Sabouts.
Oh boy. Well, it was funny. I think one of my favorite things in the early game was Nukrium sent me a message, basically, trying to be my friend, like it sounds like he did with everybody. And he kind of set out where he was going to draw the border. And I remember being like, and I don't even know how this actually panned out. I have to go back and rewatch it. But I remember saying something along the lines of, okay, I'm going to message him back after I'm done recording. And I never messaged him
I never
back.
heard anything from you.
So all of a sudden, this Satis force comes into the province, and I had forgot that I had never messaged him back. So I'm like, oh, Satis has declared war on us. Just
Do you
randomly.
remember which province?
It was 32.
32. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Because I got a message from Sabouts at that stage saying Satis has just declared war, and I just assumed that can't be right because he's so tied up with Pangea.
It was just the same turn. I attacked both Pangea and Sabouts.
It was just
now. Let's be clear. Was 32 an independent province at the time?
Yes, it was independent when I sent the message.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
And then you took it.
And then he attacked me right after.
Means he's fine with me taking it. So I took it back.
Tacit,
that's so funny.
Tacit approval.
Right.
So
He doesn't say
then,
anything. Obviously, he means it's fine for me to walk in.
Because I thought Sabouts was trying to cause friction between us, and I really trusted Nookrium. I didn't realize you'd done all this sneaky stuff. So I just thought, okay, everything's cool on that front.
He said, "Was my only hope. I can't play the minions. I got to be sneaky."
That's why just me not sending that message. I'm like, oh, I'll just message him back after I'm done recording. And me not sending it, he just moved his army in like, oh, I guess this is my province now.
And yet Midgard has a reputation for being distrustworthy.
I was like, it's war now. So then we ended up having some type of like Cold War scenario where we're just piling these troops on these two provinces.
Armies. Yeah.
Like just gigantic armies, and it never ever turned into anything.
So second,
no messages from you, but then you backed your army off, which I realize now. I thought you were like some sort of like peace offering. Okay, let's end this. So then I watched your video, and you were moving to the throne.
Because as we were building up on the border, all of a sudden I realized, it was a big mistake, because then I got the message from Das, and he was like, Wade's going for his typical throne rush. And so I was like, oh God. And then I realized, that was the 3-point throne. I had not taken it yet. It was still controlled by independents. I was like, that's the 3-point throne right there. And Wade can, travel across water with his units. So all of a sudden I realized how much of a threat and how bad the whole situation was. So my thinking was, I'm going to pull all my forces off the border. I'm not going to say anything to Nook because I don't want to garner his attention in my direction. I'll just pull my forces quietly off. He might notice, he might not. And even if he was to start moving into my provinces, by then I had a throne up in a choke area where he couldn't pass the throne. He'd have to siege the throne down, and that would buy me enough time to get my forces to the 3-point throne and either secure it or get ready to attack it if Midgard got it.
Because we were assuming Midgard was on the way at that stage, didn't we? Like that was, and when you went for Witchgrove, it was like, what the hell? You've already got 4 points. You only need that 3, and it's a 3 because you had 123 at that stage as well.
No, I was just camping in Witchgrove, so it was like, well, if I'm going to stay here a turn, I might as well claim the throne.
But you didn't need it.
No, it wasn't part of my strategy at all. I just needed a province to start attacking from into Mictlan, so that I wouldn't have what happened to me from Ulm, which is getting destroyed on the shore and losing my entire army.
It became panic mode at that point when I realized, and I'm sure when you guys realized, that Midgard only needed to cross the water and fight those independents, which he would have easily wiped out.
Yeah.
Well,
it wouldn't have been easy, but I think it was
that actually.
Oh, go ahead, Sakani.
I came in after the whole Witchgrove incident, so I had 5 points, right? Am I correct?
At that stage you had 5.
No, 4.
No, you had Witchgrove as well. You actually had.
Well, Witchgrove was just 5, but yeah.
5. Yeah, so I'm sure, I watched your previous series, the Middle Age series, so I'm sure there's a lot of Diplo. But when I watched actually your videos for this series, I was surprised that like you seemed a little oblivious to the fact that, you know, you have 4 or 5 throne points in a 7-point game. Like, of course, everybody's going to declare war on you right away. Like, there's no other way. Like, there's no other option, right? For example, the underwater throne that was kind of to the north of you, like between me, you, and Satis, that was 2 points. You know, you've got 5 points. There's no way to, you might have prepared some underwater, you know, method to go get it. Like, when you get that high, everybody's going to come and kill you like right away. Now, the timing was, of course, you know, maybe by then, like everybody's focusing on the Pantocrator throne, but you had 5 points, so you didn't even need that one. Any of the 2-point ones would have been enough to win. So, you know, it was a no-brainer. Of course, everybody's going to turn on you no matter what's happening. Now, I'm the one who I think attacked you, but, you know, it was going to happen.
Actually, at that stage, Witchgrove, the Battle of Witchgrove was critical, and Ulm had to do it. He had no choice because of, as you say, he went to 5 points at that stage, and it opened the game up to way too much. So the fact that he did it with our weird diplomacy where we couldn't talk about anything, I thought that was such a great move of Ulm's to do that at that stage. He had to do it.
I take your point. I'll come back to that. I kind of agree and disagree at the same time, but I'll come back to that. But go ahead, Sakani. You were going to talk about your diplomatic situation when you entered the game.
Yeah, that's always tough, right? When you sub into a game, because and especially because we weren't doing out of game Diplo. Although, you know, for those of you who aren't aware, on the turn that I joined, I was allowed, you know, I messaged people out of game just to understand, because the script on that first turn. So I did do a bit of basic Diplo with some people, but not everybody, right? So not everybody got back to me. And
I think you cut out.
Yeah. It'd be good to know who didn't get back to you, because it was so critical that broke the alliance essentially when you stopped attacking. And so it was sort of one of those things where it was that's when we all had to sort of start scrambling.
So I remember, in the end, everybody did get back to me. And honestly, the people who didn't were not really involved in the alliance, I think. But what I remember you basically, Das, you informed me, like you gave me a good background information on the game, right? That there was this alliance and that I was part of it. But also the way you worded it, and maybe it wasn't just you, but it seemed like, because when I had joined, it seemed like the alliance was already falling apart.
Well, Witchgrove had just taken place.
And so, yeah, exactly. When I had joined the game, it was like, there was the game. I had already a fight with Mictlan that didn't go so well. Like I lost a bunch of giants, which doesn't surprise me, because why would you attack Mictlan with giants? And so, you know, I mean, like I said, if I had been there from the start, I would never have joined this alliance, but I was stuck in it. Yeah. And so I was really hoping for a way out. And then I was hearing, the alliance is collapsing because of infighting, blah, blah, blah. And Mictlan was all like, hey, you want to have peace? Because I got to go kill some vampires. So I was like, works for me. I got to go deal with a throne rushing Viking. So, you know, let's go do our thing. So I think the timing just kind of gave me a good opportunity to, you know, the changing of players, I think kind of made it easier for me to just be like, well, I guess I'm walking away from this fire of a diplomatic situation, and we're just going to go do our own thing from now on.
I wish the Battle Moose was here, actually, because I think this is a critical time. The two stale moves around that Witchgrove, because I think you took over turn 24. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so turn 22 was the Battle of Witchgrove.
No, I think that was turn 25.
No, it was earlier than that. I'm pretty sure. Okay. I'm pretty sure it was at turn 22.
I trust you.
I think it was, and I think that happened just before Sacrene took over. And from the diplomatic side of things, because I actually still thought it's still doable. If you cop it on the chin that you were going for a throne rush and we caught you out, it was all still doable. So all my messages to you were genuine, like that. You know, come back into the fold. It's all going to be good. This is to Midgard. So I thought that's still salvageable.
Ooh,
Ulm had no
those
choice.
messages, we'll come to that.
But Ulm had no choice. So, of course, I didn't know that Nukrium was sowing salt in my in the wounds there. But it was. But that, from the perspective, I think that the two stale turns, without anyone knowing that they were stale turns, I think, and I wish Battle Moose was here, because I think what he couldn't. I watched his videos. He had no spies. He couldn't see that I was attacking Mictlan, and so I think he felt that everybody had just left it to him, because suddenly there was no attack on the giant front. There was no. He couldn't see that I was attacking, and so he just felt that he was attacking on his own. So at that stage, after Witchgrove, where he lost so much of his forces, he thought, okay, I'm out of this. So he then pulled out, and but at that stage, I was still really hoping that we could still keep the alliance going. But it just all collapsed at that point, because, as you say, like with Sacronay, it was like you came in, you had to sort of make up your own mind about things, which we all understood, and that's all fine. That's just part of the game. But so it was the two stale turns, I think, were the critical time where. Because Ulm didn't know that they were stale turns. We were expecting a 3-direction rush on Mictlan, and it just never eventuated.
So
Yeah.
So actually,
go ahead, Lucid.
I have on my computer here. Oh, sorry. Let me just put in. I know, because I have on this computer. I happen to have. I came in on turn 21, and when I came in, Ulm has taken back Witchgrove. I have this big pile of troops on the border with Mictlan, but there's some indie provinces there for some mysterious reasons, and there are no Mictlan troops on the border with me. But also, there's like an epic pile of troops on like the Sitis Pangea border next to me, so I don't know what's going on that side either. So that was my situation when I joined, like a bunch of Viking troops in a throne that has a castle right to my north. So it's turn 21.
Okay.
I joined in.
Actually,
Go ahead, Lucid.
Yeah, so my strategy for surviving the dog pile was, because there were a few things that were tricky for me. One was, often if one player attacks you and they put all their troops in one army, the best plan is to, if you think you can beat it, fight it. But if you don't think you can, then fight around it and raid them. So that's what I would have... And basically what happened in this coalition when it started is Man put all his guys into one big death ball, Ulm put all his guys into one big death ball, and then Utgard put all his guys into one big death ball. And I was like, holy shit, how am I going to deal with 3 death balls coming at me? Because there's no way I'll be able to trade well with the death balls. The only way I can kind of trade well is if I use all my forces against one of the death balls. And so... Well,
there's supposed to be 4 death balls. Midgard had committed to go up to number 73.
When it's my turn, I'll say something.
Yeah. I mean, the thing... Okay, let's be honest. Y'all might have talked Midgard into attacking me. It didn't make any sense for him to attack me. Any of the land he got from me, he would never be able to hold on to in the long term from you and Utgard and Ulm. Like as soon as I died too, everybody's attention would have switched to him, who had a ton of land, a lot of thrones. And if he had any land from me, that would be the hardest land for him to hold on to. So, but anyway, my strategy was retract all my armies in close to my forts. And then as soon as I was kind of ready to give up everything else, and as soon as anybody got close to one of I would even have to give up some of the maybe fringe forts. But as soon as anybody got close to my central cluster of forts, to throw everything at them, eliminate that person from the coalition, and go after the next one. But I knew that wouldn't even work, so I then told Utgard, and this was right around the time of the Stales, hey, you've kind of been honorable in this, but Ulm and Man have been treacherous and scheming, and Ulm worse than Man. So let me spend my armies on them, and I'll probably lose all my stuff, but at that point you can come in with a big force and take all my stuff. Which, if I were Utgard, would have been a great deal. I'll just keep a big army on the border. I don't have to kill anything till Ulm and Man. I can raid menacingly so they think I'm still part of the alliance. But for me, that would allow me to not worry about giving up quite as many forts like when I moved an army to drive one of you off. So the first few stales, I actually thought he was doing, because his armies were staying still. They were basically exactly what I requested him to do: keep a big army on the border and wait for me to spin myself. So it's kind of funny how that ended up being a stale, but I thought he was actually doing what I requested.
Yeah. Like, and thanks for bringing that up too, Luce, because a lot of what you said, I think, is kind of close to what my perspective was at the time. I may try to segue us into Witchgrove here and just double back what I had to say. But yeah, I think the main problem I had with the coalition was actually that it was too strong. And I knew that no matter how good a player Lucid was, and I even had this kind of going on in my mind as we were setting up the game, which is, when you have one really like reputable player in any game, there's a tendency for the weaker players to gang up on them. And, it doesn't matter how good you are. If you get enough Smurfs together, they'll topple any giant, So with me, what I really wanted to see happen with our alliance, and Daz, I talked to you about some of it, was I wanted us to be able to kind of just contain Lucid and keep him a little, not provoke him enough that he's going to respond to us with a full-on war. It didn't work out, but try to wheedle him down a little bit. So like for me, I was like, well, I can take Mirai's Grace because I'm next to it. And I'll just tell Lucid, like, hey, I'm just doing this so that the Alliance will not complain about me not contributing to the war effort. But, you and I'll give it back to you and whatnot. And it's like that trade, I didn't really expect it to work, because when you guys were doing that to me in the Middle Age, it didn't work out for me to like give you guys my land that you just, it didn't stop you guys from attacking me later in the Middle Age. But I was just kind of hoping we could kind of take a few little bites out of Mictlan and funnel him into, well, this may be a little bit of hindsight wishful thinking, but funnel him into an attack with somebody other than Midgard. So like Utgard would have been a good choice, because that was the other strong player, and he had a lot of thrones, or not thrones, but he had a lot of forts up and everything. It was just kind of like try to keep him just a little bit weaker, while we can kind of drain some resources that he probably feels entitled to. Like for me, it was Mirai's Grace. But that actually backfired and provoked Lucid into getting off of a Utgard fort that was above Drake's Rest. What was that called over there? Province number 65.
The Span.
The Span, yeah, because I was very happy to see you sieging his fortification, because I was like, well, that's less resources for Utgard, who is going to be the other huge pain in my neck. And that's what also I started worrying about relays something or another, which was your single connecting province to the ocean provinces. And I was like, that's where I want to strike, because he's taken over the water, which I was kind of frustrated. Not that Ulm had any duty to do it, but I had really hoped that either Ulm or Utgard would have cut you off from the sea, but it didn't happen. And so I was like, well, I guess that's going to be my new target, is I'm going to have to ride into that province, and I can't stop him from taking the water, but I can at least cut off that huge amount of income for a while. And yeah, I just kind of stalled out there. That's why I ended up going to Witchgrove instead of in there, because I was really reluctant to provoke a hot war with you. I just wanted to contain you as much as possible. And then, once Ulm was brought into this alliance, I already didn't trust Battle Moose because of our Middle Age game. And yeah, so there was just too many of us in this coalition against Mictlan. And if Mictlan was booted out of the game, that was going to upset the balance of power. And for me, I really wanted to stay out of war as much as possible, because my entire strategy revolved around, at that point, around getting the throne of the Pantocrator before anybody could do anything about it. And what I think you guys are missing from my perspective, and why I disagree with a lot of the emphasis that Witchgrove was necessary, was that, first of all, I still needed to get one more throne. And I do understand the point that, and I think I realized this is my blunder afterwards, is you guys didn't know how many points the Throne of Zeal was, which was next to me and owned by Independence. And I even regretted that, because I had thought the Throne of Zeal was a 2-point throne as well. And so when I took Witchgrove, I even commented saying, like, I wish I'd kind of coordinated this better, because I could have taken the Throne of Zeal and Witchgrove in the same turn and gotten myself to the 7 points necessary. But since I only took Witchgrove, and this was a failure of my own diplomacy as well, I told Utgard this, but I didn't tell Ulm, was that I fully intended to give him Witchgrove. I just took it because I wanted a province that would put me in a position to hurt Mictlan, go into the relay mercs, but not expose me to too much risk. And I wish I told Ulm that, but looking back, I know that I didn't message Ulm any of that information, and so I think that's why I think that contributed to his panic attack. And that was a failure on my part.
He would have attacked you no matter what, even if you had said that, because you were such a threat at that stage.
Yeah, and I still would have considered it a betrayal. And I still consider what he did to technically have been a betrayal, because he should have talked to me, man. But it's my own fault for not talking to you guys either. And because
that's the diplomacy though kicking in.
Yeah.
That 2-turn turnaround is this is why I really like it. I love that the diplomacy was like that, because it forced those sort of moves.
Yep, I agree. And the turnaround was definitely the turnaround combined with my diplomatic style didn't do me any favors in this front either. But once I lost my profit, what I think you guys aren't understanding is that the Throne of the Pantocrator was off the table for me for 5 turns. I thought it was 7 turns, because I think in Dominions 4, your profit was when you lose your profit, it takes 6 months. Is that correct, for him to come back? And they changed it in Dominions 5, so it's only 5 turns. I'm not sure, but that was my understanding at the time. So I was like, well, I have 7 turns that I can't win the game. And that's when I was like, well, I'm going to just take everything I got against Ulm. And I wasn't in a position to really attack Ulm. I had to defend myself, I felt, because I didn't know where his death ball was going to go either. Because once he dedicates himself to attacking me like that, I'm like, well, I got to expect continued attack. And at that point, I felt I had to switch over to Mictlan, because I wanted to, first of all, punish Ulm for what he did. And the only way I could go about that, and this is also, Daz, why I set up that like, of all the people in the game, I will say this, of all the people in the game, you have a right to be angry with me. Because I definitely was messing with you up here when I took over that undead province. It could have backfired on me. You could have destroyed that small force I'd sent in to clear out the undead for you. Oh, here it was.
59. Yeah.
59.
59, yeah.
But I was like, I need to keep Daz. I need to keep somebody off of Lucid's back so that Lucid can at least attack Ulm for me, since I can't attack him directly. And that's why I did some things like, even before that happened, because that was before that happened. That was before Witchgrove that I went in and did that little move there. But even that move was designed to hopefully kill a raiding force. And a raiding force is about what you sent in. And I was like, that's one less raiding force that is going to go into Mictlan's territory and destabilize or leak away resources from Mictlan. It was also the reason why I wasn't going to attack Mictlan in Morai's Grace without trying to get some kind of assurance that it wasn't going to lead to a hot war with Mictlan. And of course, Mictlan didn't agree to it, which, again, like I said, I don't blame him. Like, in that position, I would never make that agreement either. But I kind of had to try, and I kind of thought, well, maybe, just maybe, the pressure on Lucid from these other guys and this alliance is enough that he'll welcome having a non-serious threat, and he'll put up with Morai's Grace. So that's why I did that. But after losing my profit there, my whole point in the game was to get Ulm, and then once I was able to get my profit back, I was like, well, I gotta, to a service to my viewers, I still have to try to keep winning the game on the table. But I didn't really have, that was my best opportunity to win the game, and Ulm took it from me. So that's why I went after Ulm. And a lot of my reasoning there was similar to what I think Lucid was getting at, which was just like, if you feel like everything's going against you, then just try to at least take out the person who's done you the most harm, so to speak. So, or the person who you feel the most betrayed by. So that's where I went there.
By the way, I felt pretty guilty about picking on Lucid. I got to say, personally, I was a bit. I thought, oh, geez, I'd hate to be on that side of things.
Yeah. It's it was a little frustrating, but at the end of the day, I understand it. I had a really strong bless. I would have I think I was pretty comfortable with the 2v1. When it got to be 3v1, I knew I was kind of out of my depth in terms of whether I thought I was going to survive it. So it made sense to team up. Though in reality, I wasn't going for you. I was going for Pangea or for Utgard first. So it wasn't an existential threat for you, and I wasn't near thrones. But it did make sense.
My fear was that you would just walk to any throne that you liked. And at that stage, we didn't know what the throne numbers were either.
Right.
So it was from my perspective, it was I thought the game was going to be over inside 20 turns. So the reason for me actually forming that coalition initially was to try to stop that throne rush.
And this is where also I think a lot of us overestimated each other's threat. Like I feel you guys overestimated my threat level for a throne rush, but I think Lucid, we didn't understand your logistics problem. So we had we were just completely unaware of your disadvantage in troop movement. But at the same time, it's kind of hard for you to say to us diplomatically, hey guys, don't worry about me. My troops can only move one province at a time, because on the other hand, that might be advantageous to you as well. You don't want to advertise your weaknesses.
But that's not true either. He's got flying eagles, he's got jaguars, which are unstoppable, and he's also got water blessers as well. So
I think, I should
none of that translates onto the strategic map. On the strategic map, I can only move one province at a time. Partially because of the snow, which slows my guys down, but also, I think if I had two perfect planes, I could, in that case, and it wasn't cold, I would have been able to move jaguars two tiles. But in general, I don't think I've moved a single army two provinces in one turn, except for my turkey mages. But
and
it's funny we all went cold. I found that so funny, because I chose cold because I thought, once again, Mictlan was going to be the threat and that they'd go hot. And so I went cold. I think Mictlan went cold as well, didn't you? You went that side rather than hot.
Yeah, I went cold because you start with one heat scale, and so if I went up to heat 3, I couldn't get quite enough points for my bless, so I had to turn that bad boy around and go cold too.
Okay, because
and just to make it clear, let's go ahead and transition now into talking about the fall of the coalition and kind of Utgard coming into the game, and transition into the discussion of mid-game. So anyway, go ahead, Lucid, if you have any more to add about the coalition against you, and transition that to the coalition falling apart against you.
I liked to think that it was my diplomacy that undid it, whereas I was basically offering Utgard a way out, and I thought I could hold off Ulm and Man if it were just those two attacking me. And then I found a surprise ally in Midgard. So,
and you can thank Man for that partially.
Right. So cheers, Wadestar. That was you actually probably bailed me out more than anybody for sure. So if it was 3v1, I was eventually going to lose, but I was determined I was going to eliminate either Daz or Ulm with me. Just absolutely destroy one or two of their armies.
And we were on the exact same page at that point. And that's one thing I forgot to mention, Daz, is you were telling me those messages trying to bring me back into the fold. And suffice to say, the Vikings found them extremely tone deaf.
See, at that stage, I was prepared to take one for the team. I was prepared to actually waste my forces against Mictlan if it was going to save the game, because I really thought that watching what those Sacreds could do, it was just, I'd never seen anything like it in Dominions. It was just absolutely shocking to me. It was, so I thought, well, somebody's going to have to sacrifice themselves, and so I was prepared to do that. And I think Ulm thought that they were the ones doing that as well.
That's funny. Well, that's funny, because the messages you sent me, I'm not saying this is what you intended, but I think the way I read them at the time is it sounded more like you were demanding that I fall on my own sword since I'd lost my ability to win the game. And they're like, oh, we'll just sacrifice Midgard to Mictlan. I was like, what? No.
I don't know how you interpreted that.
Well, this was all in the game, so I was pretty heated a bit about losing Witchgrove, and then, like I said, being asked to come back into this alliance that I was, wherein one of the allies had just attacked me.
Well, I guess actually, from what you're saying, your focus was on the water, wasn't it, and not so much on the thrones at that stage. Whereas the rest of us were thinking you were going for a throne rush, and so.
Oh no, I was definitely going for a throne rush up until my army was destroyed at Witchgrove. It's just that taking Witchgrove didn't fall into that throne rush strategy at all. It was just trying to be a member of that coalition so that coalition wouldn't start attacking me instead of Mictlan.
But that was the worst move that could have been made.
For those of you who haven't watched Wade Stardust videos, it's really funny. The proceeding up to Witchgrove, he's talking about how he doesn't want to get an army trapped on the shore because they can't retreat. And like for 3 episodes, he goes on and on and on about how he doesn't want that to happen. And the first time he attacks a coastal province, Ohm kills his whole army and all the retreating dudes die. So that was pretty hilarious.
Yeah, it was funny. That was a really good turn, actually.
Well, for some people.
I mean, for the game, that was a really good turn.
Yeah, it was. I'll just say one more thing, and then let's have Nukrium go. But yeah, I mean, as a player, that was devastating. But as you know, as somebody who is reflecting on the game as a whole and as a story. And I think some of my viewers may have commented on this too. They were like, well, at least now it's not going to be a boring game where somebody throne rushes without ever attacking anybody else.
Cough.
Yeah. I know Lucid has some thoughts on this subject. Well, let's get to the throne settings later, because we've already talked about it a little bit, but that's something we should talk about when we talk about like what we would do different next time. But Nukrium, how about you? How was mid-game for you?
Mid-game for me was all about, well, actually mid-game we'll say was probably because I got a ceasefire with Pangea. I thought I had a ceasefire with Pythium. I assumed I did.
Huh.
And so I was just building forces. I was just cranking out as many troops as I could. And the water provinces. And so I had a victory.
That's where you started to annoy me.
Okay, yeah. And I had you and Midgard, I know, were going at it. I didn't really know much about Witchgrove other than you guys talking about it here. About that part of the world. I sent
my most angry messages to Nook about the betrayal at Witchgrove.
You were every message from you was you ranting and raving, and every message from Dawes was just rabble rousing, just trying to get folks in with his coalition.
But you were also saying, "Yep, I've got it." Thrown at which one was it?
Everything.
Throne of Bones at 31. You were, yep, I'm on it. I'm there. I'm going to be attacking.
Yep. I was. I had a communication with Lucid also for a while where we were planning to attack you. Team it up. I wasn't going to, but I was going along with it. Yeah. I'll be right there as soon as you attack them. But I was just trying to build as many forces as I could and get into position so that I could do kind of what's about to at the end and just sort of surprise everyone, because I was pretty sure people weren't really paying any attention to me.
How did your war with Pangea end? Like at the first time?
So you were mentioning about how he had like a big death ball of troops, and that's what he did. Is he ran through 70? Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to move that. 79 there, and he was moving into Satis, and I had a pretty good sized army up. Because I was expecting him to sneak attack me. And instead of, I didn't think I could defend against him because he had his god with him. Made my force there at 79 at my fort. So I figured the best strategy was just to charge into his territory and just try to take as much income as I could. And I took his throne at 80 and his other fort at 89, and then moved up around to his cap circle.
Mm.
You did a great job actually going
his
up
territories, and he got 2 of mine and just sat in Satis. My walls were holding.
He never broke the fort at Satis.
He didn't have enough forces, but they were powerful. And so I was watching these attacks. Turn after turn, Nukrium was coming out against him, but couldn't break through the what are they? The centaurs. So he had these centaurs that were just there. So he didn't have enough numbers to actually break the walls. But it was interesting because it was just turn after turn. It seemed like there was an attack, and I always thought it'll be this turn that they break, but they never did.
So I sort of came to the conclusion just to kind of let that go and just try to break him in his territory, take his money away. And so that's why I took a bunch of his territory up to the north and hit me from the south. And so I started moving my force back. Because I probably wasn't going to be around much longer, especially Pythium Sense knew what he was doing now with the win. But I saw some gathering of man troops on the east, looking at my throne, I think is what's going on there. And Utgard attacked me on the very last turn. I knew he was coming for that throne at 80 also. So I wasn't going to be around much longer. But for a moment there, mid-game, I had been all right. I had some strength, and
we were worried about you for a hot minute going for a throne rush, too. There were
I even said it in my channel. Like, I can't believe I might actually have a path to victory here. I didn't really think that was all the way through. One does not die in this series. But for a moment,
I was sort of because you threw a lot at the throne at 20. You actually threw a lot of troops at that. To actually before you could take that, and I always was thinking I should just go to 34 with my water troops and then sneak into it in between your battles and just take what was left.
I saw your water troops sitting there. I thought you were going to do that.
Yeah, I was so tempted to, but I just in the end I thought, look, I'll try to keep the peace there because by that stage Wadestar was being a pain in the ass.
Throwing in troops into there because I was worried you were going to do that. So rather than just sitting there and building up a proper army and moving in, I kept on throwing. I thought might be able to just win, and it took me like 3 turns, I think, to finally take it.
Yeah, it was a while.
And steal it.
I had one water guy in there just watching, and so I watched each of the battles.
So that was my mid game.
It's interesting how that mid game turned out, Nuke, because I was really, when I joined, I didn't have much of a border with you. It was mostly Pangea, but then, as you described, you took over that land, and so I ended up, taking 80 was always in my crosshairs.
I knew you were going for that. I saw that army every time building.
I know I cut off there. Yeah, but fortunately for you, I was being very cavalier about throne points, right? And, even though I joined after Witchgrove, like Drake's Rest, which is 64, still hadn't been claimed, and there was still the Underwater 69. And so even though he was at 4 points, I actually didn't know that Witchgrove, the battle had just taken over. So that was on the coast too. So I was like, well, he could take Witchgrove if he wanted to. Of course, he had just taken it and lost it. But anyways, I had to, I ended up focusing my mid game against Midgard. But if he hadn't been in such a throne, rush position, then looking at the war raging on in your lands between you and Pangea, I kind of felt that would have been a great move for me, was to move east and, just clean up after you guys had been killing each other, and hopefully, definitely grab 80. But then I felt I would have been very safe in taking the Underwater throne, because I always felt you were going to make a big play underwater. I felt you'd been much stronger underwater, but I think you ended up being too distracted by the war on land with Pangea, and I guess Python later on. But
just trying to take Pangea.
We could have ended up me fighting against you instead of against Midgard.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Sabouts. Unless Nukrim, do you have anything else you want to add? Any final thoughts?
I was trying to get Icenia before quite a few times into the war with Pangea. I don't know, not this turn. So I was even willing to give him that throne at 80.
I was doing the same in the early game. I was trying to get Pangea to attack Utgard because I wanted Utgard and Mictlan to be weaker, mutually weaker. But yeah.
Well, I was trying to get Pangea to attack Mictlan. And I thought I had it. And then,
I didn't like Pangea attacking Nukrium because Nukrium was point like my solid ally. Like, he didn't complain too much about the ask I'd made for the Angelic Reach. So yeah, I was fully committed to that alliance there, and I was just trying to put pressure on Pangea to lay off Satis because I wanted Satis to be attacking certain other people. But anyway, let's go on, Sabouts. In particular, I'm going to be curious about your move mid-game into, what was it called? The throne I'd taken that was in Utgard's sphere of influence.
Oh, yeah. So mid game was a very interesting time for me. It was very early in the mid game. That's when I started moving forces back off of Nukrium's border, and sort of there was a ceasefire going on there because I was mainly concerned about the rush going on. I didn't know a whole lot about Witch Grove or that whole situation. I definitely wasn't part of that alliance or pact that was being formed to take out Mictlan, because I didn't have any borders really with them or any way to get to them. So I was a little bit in the dark coming into the mid game, and all I had to go off of was that Midgard was a big, mean baddie, and he was going for a throne rush. So instantly my instinct was, okay, I got to secure the 3-point throne. And then after that, I sort of got out of track. I wasn't really, my head wasn't really in the game. So then I started thinking, well, how can I further cripple Wade? I think I ended up watching a battle. It was between, Wade, who did you fight at that time? It was either Man, or it was the one where you lost. You got like, oh my God, you got slaughtered by Utgard. I can't remember if it was one of those ones.
Thanks for reminding me.
One of those battles.
No, that was happened. A lot later. That was a lot later. So it would have been
okay. Man. It would have been Man then. I think I watched you and Man hash it out, and I watched both you guys lose a lot of forces. It was one or the other. And then that kind of made me think, okay, I think we could, we'll move on to this throne here, and that'll definitely make sure that Midgard has absolutely no way to do anything. Because right at this point, I didn't really know you could send forces across the water at the 3-point throne at any point, and it wasn't really very well defended. I had set up a trap there, and I had some forces sitting there, but it wasn't defended enough to fight a massive force. I wasn't 100% sure on where you stood. So my thinking was, well, maybe I can come across the water. If I take this throne, then you're definitely going to be handicapped. Even if you get the 3-point throne, you'll be handicapped from being able to do anything with it. I think that was my thinking originally. But then, obviously, Utgard had sent me a message saying that he wanted the throne. It was technically within his domain, and I wasn't going to question that at all because I wasn't ready to provoke a war with Utgard. And then on top of that, I knew he would be able to defend the throne from Midgard a lot better than I would across the water. So I totally moved off it and messaged him back, said, it's your throne, you can have it. And he moved on to it. And then at that point, that was kind of the part where it got awkward for me, because your throne rush was pretty much dead in the water. But
Thank you for being the only one to realize that.
Your throne rush. Well, that's the funny thing, though. That's where I'm going with it. Your throne rush was dead in the water at that point. But for some reason, I had this urge to still try and kill you. So for like 2 turns.
What's this with people wanting to kill Vikings?
For like 2
it's
turns.
Diplomacy. It's
I was trying to figure out how to kill you. And then that's when somebody in the comment section who had been watching the series was like, hey, maybe Midgard's not that much of a threat anymore. I mean, you can't really get to him, and he doesn't have a path to victory. And I was like, that's a really good point. And once I went and looked at the score chart, I was like, there's no way he can really take it from here. And then I think it was maybe like a few turns after that, that's when I saw Utgard just, I shed a tear. I think everybody shed a tear when that happened. And that's when I knew, even if you were building up a force, that there was no way you're going to cross that water and take that 3-point throne, because by then I had built it up pretty heavy. There was a trap on there. It was very, very well. There's tons of forces just shoved inside the walls. So I knew at that point, all I had to do was keep a ton of forces on that throne, and then I wouldn't have to worry about that. I'm trying to think what else happened in the mid game that was really critical. The mid game was definitely a more awkward point between the exchange going on there with you, Wade. I don't think I really had a whole lot of contact with anybody else.
Well, you didn't reply to any of my messages.
Oh, no. None of the ones where you were sending me. I could tell you were very, very upset about what was going on. I was like, I don't really have anything to say. I think I'm just going to.
I think you replied to any of my messages the whole game either. Did you reply to anyone's messages?
I was very much in contact with Das around the early mid game. Back and forth.
We were back and forwardsing a lot, swapping information.
Yep, I had a lot of contact with Dwarf Comic.
Really?
Pangea.
Figured you had kind of an alliance going with him.
Yeah, we had kind of a pact, and that really was just because we coincidentally ended up bordering each other, and we had some baggage from the mid game. He was the only one in the mid game that showed me any remorse.
What are you talking about? I had to leave a comment on your channel. I was your best friend in the end of the mid game.
I know, but it's funny.
Game.
Not to get into the middle age game, but it's funny because through the whole middle age game, I until I went back and watched the videos, I was like, you're my sworn enemy, Wade, all the way through the whole thing. Because I thought you were just trying to trick me, especially near the end of the middle age. But that's funny because that baggage kind of carried into this game, right? Because
I realized that when I watched your videos. Yeah.
Yeah. So I still had this kind of like Wade is the bad guy, and Pangea is, he's the only one that kind of was my ally, even though he got destroyed in the mid game. So, or in the middle age game. So I kind of allied with him, and then that's when him and Nook were hashing it out. Honestly, I at some point I was gearing up to attack you, Nook, but it just never really worked out like that in the mid game, because then having to fall back and deal with the 3-point throne, and then the threat of Midgard that whole time, it never turned into anything. So I somewhat abandoned Dwarf Comic, but I think he understood because I had that contact back and forth with him, and I let him know, hey, I have to pull back because Midgard's going for a throne rush, and I have the key to his victory in my domain.
Well, it's funny because since you didn't reply to me, you left me to fill in the blanks with everything that was happening with you and Utgard, and you had me convinced, based on some messages Utgard had sent me, that you two had organized that whole kabuki dance there of cutting off my income from those couple of sea provinces and that fortress province until Utgard could come up and take over the siege. So that's why I was totally convinced that everybody was making these alliances against me after I felt like I'd been taken out of the game.
It's so crazy because really me and Utgard had very, very little contact at that point in the game.
Yeah.
So it was really just pure coincidence. I saw an opportunity was you were being kicked on the ground. I saw an opportunity to take a few of your water provinces for the additional income and take the throne just to, really land the final kick whilst you were already on the ground. But then that's when Utgard messaged me, and that's when the whole, that's kind of in my domain, and I didn't want to, throw fuel to a fire. So I just let him have it. And we kind of drew our lines there.
I think the timing there was, I think the timing was actually perfect because, great minds think alike, right? So both Sabouts and I both saw your throne. I joined this. I mean, I'm joining on turn 21. You're at 4 throne points. And even though you've lost, maybe your prophet or something, there's still, Drake's Rest is still available to you. And you have underwater. You have a lot of ways that you can still do a throne rush, right? And Sabouts is thinking, I'll take 123. But I'm also thinking I'm going to take 123. And we both start making plans independently. But he gets there first, just as my army is 2 turns away. And so the Diplo delay was actually just perfect because I sent him a message. My army was marching towards that throne, and I sent him a message. I saw his troops on there. I was like, dude, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I'm going to take this throne, and you better be off it by the time I get there. And wisely for him, he decided to, retreat. And then the turn after that, I walked onto it. But the timing for the Diplo was just perfect for that, but there was no coordination.
It's funny because it totally looks like it was really well orchestrated.
And, I guess I can segue into this too. But, at that point in the mid game, like you say, Wade, I also, to me, it was clear once I had taken 123 and I was also going to claim, Drake's Rest, which was still independent control. I was going to take that as soon as I joined the game. Once I had those 2 thrones, I knew that your throne rush thing was over, right? And so I no longer considered you a threat for winning the game. And that's why I kind of sent the message globally, which was just all right, well, we dealt with this throne rush. I'm done, right? I don't care about Midgard anymore. I just wanted to stop him from winning. And then it was at that point but you sort of kept the war going with me. I mean, which I guess emotionally is legitimate, but in terms of game winning, I was just look, I stopped your throne rush. I'm good. I would have honestly preferred to go east, into the whole Pangea-Satis war and just let them, clean up behind them and take some provinces there. Because there were no thrones for me to gain from attacking it, right? This is like a turn 40 Cataclysm 7-point game. I had nothing to gain from conquering you. Your thrones were so far away from me. I didn't want to keep fighting you. Now, maybe I don't know why you wanted to fight me, but I didn't want to fight you at all. I was just, I stopped this throne rush. Now, where are my other thrones? And in the end, I had to, stick around and beat you up a few more times, but I never had the chance to go after, to do anything else basically before Sabouts eventually won.
Well, so I can respond to some of that. Like, first of all, my viewers were more savvy than I was in terms of your potential throne strategies there. And so, as I was saying before, some of it was that I had to get you back for 123 for that throne. And because I can draw income through sailing, it really, really is actually not so bad when you were leaving 1 point of province defense. It was just like, I can spend 1 turn with this particular thug and take this province and get income for a turn, and it slows down Utgard, who at that point I saw you as being in a position of, I considered you, before you attacked me, I was actually expecting you to attack me at some point, which was why I was lobbying you so hard to go after Man. And I don't know if this came through to you or not because of the way I wrote the message, but I was even offering you to hold on to provinces that were formerly mine if you were taking them from Man. And so I was trying really hard there to get that non-aggression pact with you. And what's unfortunate for what turns out to have been both of our goals, I wish we'd had a conversation wherein you said, I will give you a non-aggression pact, but you have to give me 123. And I might have hemmed and hawed about it a bit and said, well, you just can't just take it from me. But at the same time, that would have actually been what I think both of us would have gotten what we wanted. Because,
that's
like I said,
really interesting.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, let me just stop you right there. So that's really interesting on 2 reasons. Just first of all, let me back up because you said, oh, you want me to go after Man and you'd let me take some provinces that he had originally. And also for the record, I think basically at the same time, Man is telling me the exact, going backwards, right? Man is like, oh, you can attack Midgard and you keep any of the land that was formerly mine, right?
Yep.
So both sides were on it. Utgard to be on their side.
Yep.
I knew both of you weren't realizing. Yeah, but looking at the map, there are no thrones over there. I have zero interest in attacking either Man or Midgard, south of Drake's Rest. There's nothing to win there. There's land, but there were no thrones. So, just from a game, game rules kind of point of view, there was no interest for me to go that way. But what you say about 123, you wish I'd offer you a nap, that's really interesting because I think the turn I joined or the turn after, the message I get from you is if you move any troops into 119, which is the peninsula province that leads up to 123, it's if you move any troops into there, I'll consider it a declaration of war. That was your message to me. So I was like, well, okay, I guess.
Well, because where are they gonna go from 119?
Thinking about. I know. I get that. But it's just there's a big, that's in one direction. And then the other direction is, if I receive that message, do you think I'm going to ask you then, oh, well, how about we just have a nap and you give me 123? No, I didn't think that's where your head was at.
I think actually, if I can cut in there, what I think the problem is again, we found we could actually intimidate each other, but in this game, no one was intimidating anybody, and it was I found that quite interesting as well, just from a diplomatic thing between the different series. It was so that sort of comment in the first 2 series would have actually had people would have stalled. They would have thought, oh, okay, but not anymore.
Well, I think my diplomacy was definitely a disadvantage, and I definitely was certain that Man was doing his best to get you to go after me. And I don't know, I think if you dedicated yourself to war with me sooner, you would have had a path to victory through taking out Midgard. I don't know how that would have panned out with the other players,
Yes,
of course.
I agree.
But yeah,
I was never going after you, Wade. So I don't know if you realise that, but I was. It was only at the end. I just wanted the inner throne. That's all I wanted at the end.
Yeah, I wasn't going to let you have it. No way.
But there was no point really that I thought I wanted to be at war with you. So I think you've missed. I think it's Nukrium's whispering in your ear the wrong things.
Well, ironically, I thought that whole time that Mictlan was still at war with you. And neither of you two, like I'd sent you so many messages saying like we can have peace, but you got to declare war on Ulm while he still exists, and you have to make peace with me and Mictlan. And you never even told me that you'd already made peace with Mictlan. And nor did Mictlan. That might have been nice to have known my ally. So all this time I'd been working, like all this time I'd been like trying to get you off of Mictlan's back, and you'd already gotten off of his back.
Yeah, I left straight away as soon as
I know. I know now. Lucid even published a video saying peace with man, and it still didn't connect with me. I'm not sure if I didn't see the title or if it didn't connect with me. But all that time, I thought you were still going after Mictlan, and that's why I justified every single time when I went into your territory. It was just like I gotta keep hitting Daz so that Mictlan can finish up Ulm.
That's so funny.
I don't think you asked me. You asked me about Utgard, and I told you right away, yeah, I made peace with Utgard.
I know I didn't ask you, but you could have told me.
Really? Yeah. Well, why would I do that?
Yeah, why would you? Indeed, my quote-unquote ally. It was a good move. I mean, because it was definitely... you definitely were getting what you needed, I think, tactically out of it. You just needed to have peace with him, and it was definitely in your best interest to keep me and Man fighting each other.
Yeah. I had a big army down there by Man, so I trusted Daz a little bit, like enough that I think he would hold up the nap, but not enough where if I looked weak that he wouldn't move in. But
we didn't have a nap after the first nap.
Right.
That whole other time, we were just basically. I told you, as long as you weren't throne rushing, I wasn't going to. Actually, we did have a nap, didn't we? Again,
I thought you guys did.
We might have. I can't remember actually.
Yeah, I think we had some agreement. Now, I had no intention of attacking you at that stage again after that, because, like, really, the way it sort of panned out, it was like you weren't. It was quite clear you weren't going to go for a throne rush, and so that was my only real fear at the start of the game. So I was quite happy to just. And
just to make clear, I think I can totally see the point of view too. Like, as I said earlier, Daz had a legitimate reason to have a grudge against me because I surprise attacked him.
But even then, I still didn't want to go after you. That was I really thought I'm going to give him I gave you 3 chances, and then the final one where you started sending those arrows against me and stuff like that, I thought,
well, we were still at war.
I was never at war with you.
Well, I declared war on you, which means we are at war.
So this might be a little out of order. Why didn't you guys have a fight at High Watch for the Inner Throne? I think half of us were probably waiting with, gritted teeth for the final battle at High Watch.
Well, we can transition. There. We can transition to the late game at this point then, and I'll answer that question. I was outclassed magically, especially with what happened with Utgard. At that point, I needed to get some key research before I could attack either of those two. And so I was basically going for living clouds. And if you watch the score graphs, it's really interesting too, because you can see how far behind I am in research against Man when he moves into High Watch. And then you can see where I actually catch up to him right exactly when the game ended, which is when my research finally got on par with his, and I got living clouds up. And I just needed one more turn. Like the next turn, if the game hadn't have ended, I was going to break siege and we were going to fight each other.
Yeah, I would have loved that to have been the last battle for us, but just never. You managed to. I don't know how you managed to block those walls. I mean, I was crushing those walls.
I'll tell you, there was a magic spell I discovered, which was to reinforce the wall, and I just held on to it, letting you stay there, because it's a durational spell. What's it called, Lucid? You should know the name of it.
Iron Walls.
Iron Walls. So yeah, I was holding off to cast Iron Walls, and it's tricky too because I think somebody had said on Discord that if you cast Iron Walls when the fort has been reduced to 0, it doesn't have any effect.
Right.
So I was really trying to budget my Earth gems to take advantage of it. And
I thought I was
just needed to
breaking
hold it
through.
off.
I thought I was breaking through 2 times, and each
Oh, you
time
were.
it was. And I was so frustrated because I thought I was going to get your god. I was going to kill. I'm basically going to get that throne for myself. And then I was just going to bunker down for the end of the game.
See, like at that point in the game, like I was saying to Sakane earlier off camera, I had like nothing to lose. So I was just pouring everything I had into trying to keep him, having to keep some of his thugs handy in his heartland instead of raiding me by raiding him. And also just holding on to my 2 thrones. Like I was so convinced that Utgard was just going to siege down Midgard and take it over just to put an end to my raiding. So I was surprised actually that Sakane didn't do that. And that's another reason, Sakane, why I was so dedicated to continuing to fight you is I just, in my head, I was just so convinced that you were just going to crush my nation after you crushed my army at 57. So,
actually, Sakane told me that he was definitely turning back. And I was surprised that you kept on attacking him because I just thought, well, he's turning away. He's told everyone that he's not going to be attacking you anymore. So why attack him? Why be the Hornet?
Part of it was vendetta, but part of it was I just didn't trust him at all either. And that's just related to my diplomacy because he kept sending me these infuriating messages saying like, calling me a warmonger. And I was like, you're the one who attacked me and you're calling me a war. Like I've only attacked one person and that was Daz. Well, I did attack Olm, but Olm attacked me first.
Yeah. That was such an interesting, I think, diplomacy-wise, that was a case of the delayed diplomacy and maybe also your flowery language. But I think mostly just the delayed diplomacy because I think, a lot of messages kind of got lost. Yeah. And you were saying like a lot of the messages you were sending me was like, well, you're saying you're not going to attack me, but then look at what happened. But in truth, I took obviously the throne at 123. And then I pushed in to Barony of Air, which is 53, and the Jungle Flats, which is where the battle happened, which was in your cap circle. And that was, I wanted to just take those 2 provinces. Well, Barony of Air had a lot of, it was just a rich province. So I just wanted the income. And then I felt I can take, this is what I wanted, just a limited war. I will take these provinces. And I actually sent you a message specifically saying like, I won't take any more than these 2 provinces and the throne that I took. And, but I had lost track of your army because of glamour, right? So I didn't know.
No, because they were dead. I think my army was dead.
No.
Oh, go ahead. Though. Go ahead though.
Yeah, this was before you had killed it. And so I didn't know where your army was. So I didn't know if you were going to raid across the ocean to try to take the throne back, which could have been expected. Going to come from the south.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that actually.
So, so I had to keep my army split between those 2 borders. And in fact, I was trying to mass up an army on the east to maybe go after Pangaea. And so in the end, I just had it was maybe like a third of my total army that I had down there. And, I worked to lay down the trap for you in Jungle Flats. But by then I had reached the key research for Utgard. So I pretty much knew that you were screwed. But it's funny. I didn't want to invade you, but I did want to have that fight because I knew I was going to win that fight. And in my thinking, after I won that fight, the war would be over. Like you would just stop. Like it'd be like, I would gracefully let you keep all your provinces and whatever. I'd be happy with what I'd taken, and then the war would end, right? But no, instead you just kept fighting. And I just sent, there was a lot of funny diplo, I think, between the 2 of us, but eventually I put a thug on your capital to
yep.
To me, it was like a show for us. Like, look, I can do anything I can to you.
Yep.
Just stop. Like if I wanted to, I could take you over, but I'm not invading you.
Yeah, and
so
I kept thinking you were Darth Vadering me.
You can, right?
Yeah, see, I kept thinking you were, like I'm altering the terms of our arrangement. Pray I do not alter them further. Because I remember you sent me the message about 123, but then you moved into Barony of R and 57, and I was like, this is just gonna. That's where I guess my distrust kind of came from. I was like, well, I can't let him keep those 2. And in the meantime, I've just got to keep holding him off because he's just going to keep saying, well, now I'm going to take this, now I'm going to take that. Like,
but you were bouncing up into 85 and 86 and in around there, weren't you?
oh, that's
With
where
your
I had opportunity to attack. That's where I
Yeah.
had opportunities.
No, he was raiding. Yeah, he was just raiding with. He was just taking province income for like a turn there. So that wasn't like that was annoying to me. That was like, yeah, that was annoying for me. It cost me a bit of, but it wasn't going to ever change anything in terms of the war. By then, I had Mind Hunt, so eventually I'd kill all his dudes. And I just felt at that point, I was like, I mean, yeah, you're raiding me, but you could. I don't know. I thought like, don't you have anything better to do? Like,
Well, honestly,
like fighting a man or something. I don't know.
honestly.
Yeah, I think we're going to lose Nuke in a few minutes too. We might want to get
okay, yeah.
his final thoughts.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and keep going. Let's keep covering our late game points, particularly in regards to Pythium. And Nukrium played kind of a key role in that balance of power.
Well, we might have
Yes.
lost him already.
Oh,
No,
did
I'm
we
still
lose
here.
Nook? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I got about 10 minutes. I gotta go.
Okay, go ahead, Nook.
It's all about Pangea. I had shifted my whole force to the north and walk all over me down there. I like lost most of my mages because, well, with the war, and so yeah, everything kind of fell apart at the end as I was just putting everything into Pangea. My
Would
late
you
game.
say you won the war against Pangea?
Won the war. I took more provinces. If it was just me and Pangea, maybe. But by the time the end hit, Utgard had hit me. I know man was. Were you building up a war, Daz?
No, I
Assault
wasn't
soldiers.
actually. No, I was just
Things
getting there to
popping up.
protect. I didn't trust you after you took those water provinces. I thought he's going to turn on me. So I just was
Force
building up.
and
I had no intention of attacking you at all. Even though people in my comments were saying you should be attacking Nukrium, we can take some easy provinces there. I thought, no, I better just keep. But that stage, Wadestar was being such a pain in the bum.
anyone could have walked all over me towards the end there because everything of mine was up north.
Yeah. No, I had no intention. I did want the water province. I did want that level 2 throne. That was about it.
Yeah, my late game was pretty much all just.
Well, I have a specific question for you, Nukrium. How did you did stale one turn? Remember? And I think that was around the time that Pythium was also attacking you. How do you think that affected the ultimate outcome of the game?
Oh yeah, it didn't change much because that's why I was okay with because we could have gone back, but I was okay with letting it go because I was basically just building forces. Didn't really have any armies to move at the moment. Everyone was kind of in the position that I wanted them to be in. In the water, there's nothing I could really do about it, other than just make more forces and try to get an army built up to the south. So,
Did
I
you have
didn't
a plan to take either of the water thrones back in any kind of time?
because we were at turn, what was it, like turn 34, turn 35 when you finally took that?
Yeah.
And
By
you were
then
cut
it
off by
was-
that stage, weren't you? You had a lot of problems to get through by that end game to get back to those water thrones.
Being able to get back to it, I wouldn't have made it back by the time the cataclysm hit. So
Yeah.
my end game plan was to just my throne that I had the whole time at 79 or at 66, I mean, and the one I just took from Pangea to 80. I was just going to sit on those.
And also with the siege of Satis itself, and I don't think many people actually saw that you were at siege. You really couldn't build up many forces in the south anyway, could you? Really, to any great extent.
I had a good sized fort at 48 and 47.
Oh, okay, you had one there as well. Okay.
So I was
Yep.
cranking out quite a bit there. I didn't have the ability to make mages except for in Satis, so that was killing me because that was my big thing was horde skeletons.
Yeah.
Just
Yep.
cranking out Falchineers was all I could really do. So yeah, I was kind of done for by the end, which is the last turn.
Yeah.
I think one of the consequences of that is that your weakened state, because Pangea had been sitting on your cap, is what let Pythium through your lands. Like Pythium just beelined and just stomped.
He was able to
right
walk
through
all
your
over me. I
provinces
had
and then got
nothing.
into the lake.
Him
Yeah.
once he walked into the Water Nations, I was like, fine, you can have it. I can't do anything about it. And then he came in and took 47 and 58, and by then Satis and my army was into the north, and so there was nothing I could do. I started sending messages out and saying, "Hey, watch out! He's gonna win." Even before I sent the win message to everyone else, I sent one to Man a while back, going for the win, but just trying to get Man to help me out. Tell him to watch. Was the brass at 37?
Yeah, I had that pretty well protected. But
I was hoping to get you into the war to help defend my southern border. Really, what I was trying to do there.
I wouldn't have joined that early. I didn't realise that Sabouts was going for the win, to be honest. And it would have been. I would have joined too late. Because I saw Sabouts as one of my allies. Like I had Sabouts, I had Ulm. They were probably my closest allies. And so I wouldn't have just switched without actually knowing that he was going for the win like that.
Oh,
yeah,
I'm
it's probably
glad
better to say
hear.
in retrospect that Sabouts had you as an ally, Daz.
I mean, I'm glad to hear that it kind of folded out that way, because that was my plan, was to kind of stay under the radar with it all. I figured that, everybody was too busy fighting each other, and that's actually where it kind of Satis being in the situation he was in worked out to my advantage, because me and Satis had kind of fought a little bit in the beginning of the game. So I figured it would just not be abnormal for me to start attacking Satis again. It wouldn't raise any red flags with anybody. Taking that first throne in the water was very pivotal, because there was a point where obviously people would see that, and then I would have 5 points and I would be the big, threat. The nearest 2-point throne being all the way across that way there and still being owned by independents. I kind of saw that a little later on. I mean, the end game sort of all happened very quickly, because it hit a point where my first plan was to just hold the 3-point throne. And then I figure, well, I got these forces and I don't want to just sit here and wait for the cataclysm. So I'll kind of attack Satis a little bit. And then it all within one episode all just happened at the same time, where it was like, well, I could take this throne. And all of a sudden it's like, well, nobody owns this throne up here. And Dwarf Comics got Satis so wrapped up right now in their battle that it's kind of it was just a walk up there. So the hardest part of the end game was trying to keep the whole thing under wraps. I don't know at what point, Nook, you actually knew that I was going for that second throne. Was it when I moved the forces? Was it when they entered and they were bordering the province? I moved into the province bordering the water?
Throne until you walked into the water up there.
Ah, okay. See, that was really important. That whole thing was important. That's why I didn't claim the throne. I claimed both thrones, for anybody that might not know. I claimed both thrones at the same time on turn 38. Or I set them up to be claimed, and then they were claimed both thrones at the same time on turn 39. So I was sitting on that one throne below your territory, Das, for a couple turns.
Yeah.
And I just didn't dare to claim it, because I knew that anybody that was checking the throne chart would see that I had 5 points. I figured there was enough people in the dark that didn't know what was going on. My hope
actually,
was
for the
that,
I think for the last 3 turns, people knew that you were going for it.
Okay.
Yeah, it was but I didn't have any forces that I knew that could take it off from you. Mictlan was also then trying to get forces ready to take that one off from you, that number 20, and then Utgard was trying to sort of enter the water at 69, and it was sort of one of those things. I think the rest of us were all talking about it, weren't we? About 3 turns out.
I watched a couple videos of you where you were talking about watching me. I think it was Lucid saying that. And then someone come back and said, I think that was on 3 or 4 turns out.
Earlier I was worried about you.
Yeah, it was earlier on. It was Satis that there was a bit of fear about, but then it was like, I'm pretty sure after that it was actually Utgard that everyone was worried about, because
yeah, that actually brings it to a really good point, because Lucid sent me a message. And I laughed in the video about it, because he sent me a message saying, I think we need to worry about Satis. And that's when I sent the message back.
I saw that video.
Yeah, I sent the message back to you saying, oh, don't worry. I already noticed that Satis was going for the thrones, and I've got it under control. And that was the same exact turn I was getting ready to move into Satis's water province and take that throne below you, Das. So it worked out perfect in that regard, because I was like, oh, well, Lucid, Mictlan already thinks that that Satis is trying to go for all these thrones. And so I'm just going to play it off as if like, oh, coincidentally, I noticed that too. And I'm going to try to stop him right now. But it was actually just,
I knew. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say it was a part of my plan. So
yeah.
Go ahead,
I suspected that Satis was going to go. Yeah, I thought Satis was going to make a play for the 69, the throne underwater below me. And I guess I underestimated how tied up he was with Pangea. So I mean, for me, it was, I could have taken the throne earlier, but I didn't think I could keep it from Satis because you could just Skeleton spam easily underwater. And I can't like make a permanent fort there or anything. So I always felt that I was weak and I would just be reactive. So I just had like a few reigns of water breathing. And if Satis ever did try to take it, I could take it back with thugs. And then it was only at the last minute that really literally the turn before last when Pythium went underwater, then it was clear that it was a throne rush, but I didn't know. I was in the dark about the other underwater thrones. If I had known, like from Man or from others, that Pythium you already were sitting on 20 but hadn't claimed it for a few turns, I probably would have I had to do like a last minute change. I mean, it was going to be thugs sent underwater anyways, but originally it was just for Satis, right? So knowing that it would have been Pythium, then, I saw Pythium coming up through Satis. And so that would have made it clear for me, and it would have been easier for me to, react to that more appropriately.
Actually, Sakwane, why didn't you throne rush earlier? Because there was a real fear that you were going to go into the water from 123 and then go across and claim the throne at the throne of the Panda Crater. You would have only needed that level 2 in the water there, and you would have actually had the win. And that was about 6 turns out.
Yeah, so that was actually funny because I remember there was a whole thing for like permission to go across the water because I wanted to stop Midgard's raiding and stuff. And then from there, I think the whole notion that I could go claim the Panda Crater throne arose. But the truth is, I didn't have enough water income to forge enough water breathing items to get any kind of army across. I could get thugs easily enough, and my thugs could, but they'd never be able to siege down a wall. Giants, underwater breathing is like based on the size of the unit, and my guys are like size 4 giants. So you really can't bring a lot of dudes across at a time. And I have to siege down, by then, Sabouts had that forted up. So for me, and not only that, but also Utgard, what's strong about it is the communions, right? And the Skeleton spam. So
I think at that time
I would have
only
needed
had
to
a
have...
palisade.
Yeah, and you actually had a monstrous army. You had a monster army on 123 at that stage.
I will say though
that army can't cross the water.
But if you had
how do you get that monster army
two of
across?
the water breathing books, you could have brought 30 giants, which would have had a siege strength of 100. You would have popped that in 2 turns.
Which one? The throne? The 3-point?
Yeah.
The throne of the Panda Crater. There was a fear, just before the fear was about Satis. The fear was that Utgard was going to be able to get across the water because he was asking permission from Mictlan, because Mictlan shared that with me.
But,
but
hang on, just to clarify, in terms of the actual technical part of it, I think the water breathing tomes are 50 water breathing, if I'm not mistaken. So is 12 giants. So with 2 of those, I can get 24 giants across. So that's 20 water gems.
Of 5 per giant.
I didn't have the water.
So that would be 100 points of destruction.
But I'm assuming. But I'm assuming that Pythium's got his whole army there. I can't beat his whole army with 22 sacred giants, is what I'm assuming. Yeah. So, anyways, but in hindsight, I think that might have been if from the start, that might have been a viable strat. Not me. I mean, I think ICNU before had spent some water gems on Frostbrands, and I probably made 1 or 2 more. But if I had saved all the water gems, then that might have been a viable play. But you guys would have known that it wasn't viable. But for me, it definitely was not a viable play. I just didn't have the gems to make that happen. Although, in hindsight, like to me that was clear, but it wasn't obvious that you guys would know that it wasn't clear. So, I didn't realize you guys would be so afraid of me throne rushing when I knew that I could never pull it off.
Let me interrupt real quick. Nook, before you go, make sure and let us all know, okay? Nook, are you still here?
I'm here.
Okay, yeah. I just want to interrupt and say, if you have to go precipitously, give us a little heads up so we can formally say goodbye.
I do have to go. So
okay. Well, go ahead and say goodbye, and we'll probably go ahead and wrap up the discussion. But anything else we need to ask Nook real quick before he does go?
Can't think of anything.
I'll start with that. Single player Dominions, but multiplayer is so much better. And I really had a blast doing it, and I would happily join you guys in another game of Blitz mode. I'm really looking forward to that. I was mentioning it in my live stream last night, and that as well. So some sort of like live streaming a Blitz mode of the Dominions, I think would be a lot of fun.
I think Disciples would be good too.
Well, we'll talk about that again at the end of the podcast after you leave, Dukrian. But yeah, I think we're all very interested in trying to make that happen too.
But thanks for inviting me. Let me crash the party for a bit.
Well, thanks for joining the game, Nook. Right, Nookrim?
Absolutely.
We won't trust you next time. After
what do you mean?
you can only get to do that once.
I figure this is the end game. It's not going to happen again. So let the messages fly.
The nuclear propaganda machine.
I didn't realize how much you stitched me up.
Yeah, I threw a lot of them out there. I was just hoping to get someone in the war that wasn't me.
That was good.
Maybe it did work a little bit, I guess.
It did. It absolutely did.
It's
well, Midgard didn't need much nudging to get on to go against Avalon.
It's a lot. It's fun watching the videos and watching you guys react to my completely made up stories about how man was plotting against Midgard and all these other things.
I think that would have played a big role actually when that would have come through, because I was absolutely not plotting at all.
Well, in fairness, I did surprise attack you before Nukrium sent me that message, but then when he sent me the message, I was like, of course. Good job, Wade Starr. You attacked this person who had already preemptively attacked the betrayer.
No, because I was actually, even after you attacked me with the surprise attack, it was like, okay, look, I'm going to wear that one. It's still important to keep everything on an even keel. I didn't realize that Nukrium was actually was poisoning the well there.
This sent that one. Every time I sent a message out, it was because I saw armies building up on my border, and so I was worried they're about to attack. So you cranking out some armies in your forts there.
Or you mean me or Daz?
No, me. In 60, that was where I can get my water troops. So I was trying to get water troops to go into the water at 19 and 20 or at 72, but Nukrium beat me to it. I didn't have enough of them. The bloody Throne of Bones kept on everything. All my inner provinces kept on being attacked after the Throne of Bones was taken. So I had to end up using those forces to fight on land rather than in the water.
It was funny when you held me responsible for that too.
One of the funny things with the kind of sending out fabricated messages or fake stories is if we could have done it out of game, none of that would have worked, because we'd have been like, oh my god, you said that you were conspiring against me, and then everybody would have offered assurances that no, indeed that wasn't happening. And
well, let's get to some of the metagame stuff after we cover at least one last point on the late game, which is kind of between Sabouts, Lucid, and Sakane, which is about our last-ditch efforts to stop the throne rush, which honestly, that's another reason why that fight didn't happen in the end, was I was kind of confident that you guys would be able to stop him.
But, oh my God, please. Don't bring this up again. So, like, just for me, I have to, actually, there was some really good comments on my channel. Chris Lighthawk, who I think was helping Sabouts out.
Yep, his ringer.
Who mentioned that they hadn't scripted it properly. Yeah, but no, so, I wanted to start the podcast off with this, but, my bad, guys. So I totally messed up. Given how Sabouts had scripted it, what happened is, I sent my thugs in, but I forgot in my turn micro to put the flesh eaters on them. They still had frost brands. And so my thugs just ran away like cowards because the Hydras have a fear aura, and which I knew about and I planned for, but I just didn't equip the items on them. So I'm pretty convinced that I would have won that battle. Now,
and just to clarify, because a lot of people won't know.
Yeah, go ahead.
The flesh eaters, the reason that was important is because they make your troop go berserk.
And then
Correct.
you run.
So, so even without them, so, my thugs, the Scotty thugs are really strong. And they were unkillable. They were surrounded, but they're pretty unkillable. I mean, it's a complicated fight and there's a lot of details to it. And there's actually good back and forth with Chris on the comments too. He thinks if they had scripted it differently, they might still have won, even if I had flesh eaters, and that might be true. But the way that it was scripted with the flesh eaters, I'm fairly convinced I definitely would have won that fight. But that's Dominions, right? You forget, you make one little mistake and you lose a pivotal battle. That happens all the time. But yeah, so my shot, I was definitely more confident I was going to be able to stop that. I know, and from having watched Lucid's, his was more of a desperate attempt, but I was pretty confident because I always had a plan to send thugs there to take the throne from Satis. I just had to change the gear on them a little bit and the Hydras, but I did not change the gear, and so failure ensued. Also, I should mention that I was distracted by 150 ocelots that Lucid was sending my way one turn early, and so maybe that was distracting me a little bit.
The backstabber,
no, it wasn't a backstab. He broke the nap one turn early, and honestly, I didn't mind. I mean, I was conceding kind of. I mean, I tried to keep it, but I didn't have a lot of army there. But if he hadn't attacked that early, I probably would have been focusing more on the throne and might not have made that same micro mistake. But they're kind of independent in game, right? I didn't need those flesh eaters to fight.
Might you have Mictlan dropped him?
So, I'm sorry, Lucid.
Would you, Squanny, would you have considered monolithing dropping him if I didn't go a turn early?
Oh, I wanted to ask that actually. Why did you not?
Well, I didn't because I was confident in my thugs. I was confident that the flesh eater thugs were going to be fine, and I didn't need to mono drop. But here's the thing. Like you say, if Lucid, you hadn't been there, then I wouldn't have had a better use for my monolith. So I probably would have mono dropped because that would just, why not, right? To be extra safe. But since I was confident in the thugs, I felt the monolith could also, win the fight for me at Drake's Rest. And so that's why I chose to mono drop there instead, because I did have something better to do. So mono drop, by the way, is my pretender is a monolith, and he can't move it except if you teleport him, and people call that doing a mono drop. And monoliths are very hard to kill. And actually, you should watch the fight either on my or Lucid's channel. It is pretty hilarious. Ocelots versus a monolith. Go watch it.
That's good.
And let me add
there.
Let me add too. I really think that that they should look at the spell scripting AI again, because I do think that it really is kind of a freak thing that you lost with your monolith on that Throne of Zeal. But let's come back to that after we finish talking about the thrones. It was hilarious, but in my opinion, not something that should have happened. But anyway, let's go
worked
ahead.
a lot better. Every Bladewind cast, it killed 20 of my guys. It's very painful to watch.
But
from my perspective,
go ahead, Lucid.
Yeah, from my perspective, going after 20, I had been planning to take it as part of kind of my general try to get some thrones before the game in strategy. Before it was Satis's, and then once Sabout's moved in, basically my plan to take it was the same. I had 2 Kings of Rain who are really high water mages, and they're amphibious, and they were dealing with Ulm. When I lost the battle in Ulm, I kind of decided those guys were going to be dedicated to trying to take this throne. I changed my research so I could take it, and I got Conjuration 5, which gave me summon water elementals. And my plan was to move both of them in with just a huge amount of gems and do summon water power and then just spam out probably 30 water elementals, which would have killed the army. So that was my plan, but then he summoned Leo Campuses, which were the little like sea tigers or whatever. And I don't even know if he thought about it, but that completely negated my ability to do water elemental spam. And he did it kind of at the last minute. There weren't any Leo Campus, and then all of a sudden there were a lot. And in my battle report, it looked like, because I went back and looked at all my turns, it looked like his core army of Sacreds was, like 20 to 30 units. And then by the end, the turn I was going to attack, it was like 90 units, and the biggest was Leo Campus. So I assumed there was a huge swarm of them. In reality, there weren't that many. But in all my tests, what would happen is they would run past all the water elementals and kill my mages who were summoning them, and they're really, really fast underwater. The Hydras and the Serpent Cataphracts, which were the other units he had, were really slow. And so if he didn't summon those, then I basically would have just cranked out a ton of water elementals, and I probably would have won. So that was my plan. Now, when he did summon them, I basically had to last minute figure out something different, which was turning one of my Kings of Rain, who are not really thugs, into a thug. And I didn't have the right items, because I only realized it the last turn. So I didn't have a Flesh Eater to deal with fear. So it was really kind of on a hope and a promise that I went in there to try to take that throne. But yeah, so it was kind of fun, desperate attempt at the end.
And then Sabat's, in particular, with what Sakane was saying about the attack over here with your Hydra scripting, do you have anything to add about what you would have done differently, or did it go exactly as planned?
No, actually, it didn't. If I could go back, definitely would have casted Relief. That probably would have helped a lot, because the biggest thing was at that point, especially near the end of the battle, both his forces and my forces, it was really who got off the field faster at the end of the battle, because we both got routed each other, and our units were just locked because they were super fatigued. Everybody was fatigued. My forces could not kill him, and his unit, they kept surrounding his guy, and his unit couldn't run away. And then my forces got routed, and then my forces were fatigued, and they couldn't run away. So it was just this, everybody sitting there kind of waiting to see who ran away first. I think it would have been. I was going to say, I think it would have been a lot different if I had set even my Pretender up to cast Relief. I really should have been cast Relief.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in. Actually, it was the fact that your guys were slow that led to your winning, because everybody had routed, but my guys have quickness. So when they woke up, they just zipped off the field and therefore lost first.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was saying. We both
had run off first. I would have won if your guys had woken up. Well, but I mean, the other main thing that Chris Lighthop brought up was the fact that you cast Marble Warriors, which gave which negated your cold resistance, and I had Winter's Breath, which had a chill aura, and that contributed a lot to the fatigue on your units.
Yeah,
that was the other big scripting
definitely.
thing that he mentioned.
Well, it was brutal. It was really, really brutal.
And then to what Lucid was saying about your Leo campuses, how did that work out, since that was so key in winning over there? Was that just kind of dumb luck, or had you anticipated the need for the Leo campuses?
No, I definitely anticipated the need for them, but I never even thought about them being an excellent counter with him bringing in his Sacreds and casting the water elemental. That actually wasn't, I definitely was intentionally building those units because they're just really great underwater units. And at the time, I believe that they were the best underwater units I could build for what I had down there at the time. But it really was, it was a combination between building them because it was the best I could handle at the time, and pure luck that it happened to be an excellent counter for the elementals. So that worked out really well.
Yeah.
Well, so Daz, do you have anything you want to add on this particular point? I don't have much to say. I was just kind of intent on locking horns with you.
Yeah, I was the same, actually. By that stage, I knew I couldn't affect any. And I really just wanted that inner throne. I can't tell you how pissed off I was when you actually found that spell. I couldn't figure out how you managed to put those walls back up.
Well, the pissed offedness was mutual because I was pissed off that you felt like you deserved that throne.
After all the stuff because I was a very good neighbour to you all the way through, even though Nookrium was sort of telling lies about it. I was actually, I tried so many times to bring you back into the fold, and in the end I thought, I deserve that throne. I thought
and it was
fair.
literally all I had.
No, but that stage it was like, I don't care what happens anymore. I want that throne now.
Well, let's go ahead and talk on what was at least the most humorous part of the end game, which was the battle at Drake's Rest. And I already kind of made my opinion about it already, but how about the rest of you? I think we all got to see it happen. Daz?
I didn't really analyze it too much. I don't know if I saw it personally or if it was one of the other videos that I saw of somebody else's. But yeah, I didn't really. It was interesting, but other than that, I didn't really analyze it. I'm not a really good Dominions player, so when I analyze something, I've got to spend like an hour looking at every single little thing, pausing stuff, and seeing what spells are coming out. So it's sort of, and I didn't do that with that battle.
And Sabaus, before we get to the big two.
Boy. At first it was like a combination of feelings, right? Because in the beginning I was like, oh man, Utgard's, he's really got this. I think he's going to be able to hold this. And then, Mictlan's forces come in, and I was like, boy, wow, he's really slaughtering them. Those ocelots are doing some serious damage. I think he's going to really fold. And then at the end there, I was like, no, Utgard's got this. That monolith is some powerful things. And yeah, I was real shocked, how it all folded out.
And then Lucid and Sakane, you guys have the most to say on this, I think.
I didn't expect a monolith to be there.
Yeah. Nobody ever expects the monodrop.
The Spanish monolith.
So, yeah, exactly. So actually, it's funny. This summer I played a really long sort of all nations game, and I was fighting against Zabulba, who was also using a lot of, they have beast bats and ocelots. And so I really developed a particular hatred for that unit because they're so strong, and especially with the ridiculous bless that Lucid had. So I knew that I strongly suspected, and in the end I was right, that the token force that I had there, I just didn't have enough meat to let my spells, eventually start doing the work. And, if you watch the battle, the ocelots get through all the units in about 2-3 rounds. And so even though I had like a million mages there, they just all get slaughtered at the beginning. And that's why I thought, well, what if we throw in a monolith? And actually, to be honest, I threw it in not necessarily for the end game hilarity, but the monolith was my only earth access. And the Utgard play is like fatigue, right? And so I was going to do their usual fatigue stuff, but especially against these units that attack like 19 times per turn, I wanted to get some Curse of Stones up. So he was actually casting Curse of Stones twice. And then it was just a fatigue play. And hopefully I was going to have enough meat with Body Ethereal on them, enough Skelespam out that hopefully I could tire out the bats, and still have the mages left. And then Skelespam would win the day. But as a backup, you always have like a 38 protection monolith that they can't kill, because I knew his bless didn't have magic weapons, and it happened to be ethereal also. So, that was a great backup strat, but, AI spell scripting. And actually, when I watched the battle, I think it looked a bit different than what I saw on Lucid's channel when I watched it there. But the end was even worse for me. When I remember watching it, there's like 8 units left near the monolith. And for some reason, the monolith casts like Earth Meld, which roots them into place around him. Yeah. And they're routing by this point. Yeah. So it's like they want to run away, but they can't because the monolith rooted them next to him. And then he does the gifts from heaven to target them. Like there's like not only the choice of gift from heaven is questionable, But if he had like not rooted them before, they would have been far enough away and it would have been safe to cast it, right? But no, just so many fails, piled one on top of each other. But on the bright side, like I think Lucid pointed this out in our, we chatted a bit afterwards. But if the game had continued, I mean, I could have summoned my monolith back again. But he, that had depleted all his ocelots, right? Like,
I was overjoyed to see the result.
Dudes. So, yeah, so I might have actually been able to take that throne back. I guess it would have been like a logistics race, but Lucid can I don't know how devastating it was in terms of your troops.
I don't know. I probably would have. I mean, I had possession at the end. I had more troops I could have moved in. I don't think I had enough to move in to siege down the fort all over again quickly, especially with assassins and all that coming out. But yeah, it would have been fun to see how that played out if somebody remembered to put flesh eaters on their thugs.
Sorry. Actually, no, you're right. Assassination is another good point, right? Because his army only had like 4 or 5 commanders, and actually I knocked one of them out with an assassination spell. So It's probably a good thing that he just went in and attacked and wasn't what's the right word? Didn't honor the 3 turns and went in 2 turns, because those extra turns might have cost him like the Divine Blesser or something like that, because I was going to assassinate a few guys. So that was probably best for him.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Lucid.
One final thing, we didn't really talk about the war with Ulm too much, but for those of you who saw the final fight in Ulm, what you couldn't see unless you watched my videos or Battle Moose's, was that he assassinated like 6 of my commanders, and he had completely hidden the assassins all game. Like, he hadn't used them before, and it took me forever to break through his walls, and I finally broke through. And the turn I break through, he has 6 vampire assassins, which are some of the best assassins in the game.
That was so cool, actually. That was incredible to watch that.
Yeah.
It was interesting, the battle, that setup that he did, like with those assassins, because they got one of your main guys, didn't they?
Yeah, they got my only air mage, which was coincidentally named Chris Lighthawk. But
yeah. I think I was the only player without a Chris Lighthawk in my army.
Nope, I didn't have one either.
Yeah, you did. Yours got killed.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, at the Battle of
with everybody else.
At 111, yeah. No, he was. In fact, I think I called that. What was it?
Well, anyway, go ahead, Lucid, and let's talk about the Battle of Ulm.
Yeah. So if Chris Lighthawk didn't die, which he should have also survived the assassination, and there were like 20-something commanders there, so there's a good chance he didn't get hit. I had like redundancy for everything except him. I had like multiple people doing mass protection, multiple people doing divine blessing, but I only had one guy to do fog warriors, which had just gotten researched. And if I got fog warriors off that fight, I would have just massacred Ulm. And then I would have had a chance, depending where I wanted to go, I could have gone up and taken High Watch 24, the Inner Throne.
What? Betray Midgard?
Well, I need thrones to win, man.
I know.
I wasn't sure if I was going to do it, but if I won Ulm without losing anything, which I probably would have lost like 20 troops if I got Fog Warriors off. So that was like a major shift for me. Anyway, kind of funny.
Actually, Lucid, another question. Why didn't you take that little lizard province of 83?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Everybody mentioned that in their videos. The reason is because I was at war with Utgard, and I was also getting triple teamed. So ultimately,
no, this is before all that.
Oh,
you actually went all the way around it at the very early game, and just left it there as an island.
Well, okay, at the very early game, I was just enclosing it so that it was going to be mine. But then, almost as soon as that happened, I was going to take it, but almost as soon as that happened, that I had enclosed it, the alliance, like Utgard had 200 something, or like 200 troops on my border and wouldn't talk Diplo to me. So there may have been a turn where maybe I should have taken it, but I didn't.
Okay. Yeah.
But as soon as it was looking like there was going to be a coalition against me, taking it would just make it easier for you guys to take from me. So as you saw, it stayed neutral for the whole time, because everybody, when they were all when Utgard started attacking me, he would rather attack my provinces than run into Indies.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep,
So-
yep.
I kind of thought maybe it had to do with not sending a commander that was going to get spirit cursed, because don't those mages, those lizard mages, curse you?
Yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
care much about that part because my commanders are expendable. They're just
But it-
little blessed
It would have
machines.
affected my decision, like, for sure. I was waiting for you to take it. Like, I mean, it wasn't a serious thought on my part, but I understand exactly what you mean. Like, I would rather take out Mictlanian province defense with, a van thug than, get a van thug cursed by lizard men.
Right. Yeah.
Well, anyway, I think, is there anything else about the late game itself we want to cover before we talk about some of the metagame stuff?
No, I think it's good to move on. I've got to get going in about half an hour.
Okay, well, let's. One thing Luce talked about a bit in his videos was his lack of a solid throne strategy based on positioning, and so if we're doing this again, I think some people suggested not having the level 3 throne would have affected the game quite a bit.
Yep.
So, yeah, how do you guys feel about the throne threshold we had and the throne settings? Another thing, too, is we had a higher throne threshold until Lucid suggested, either Lucid or Battle Moose suggested we lower it, which I'm glad we did, too.
Yeah. Actually, I'll kick that one off if you like, because
Yeah.
I really wasn't that aware of when we were making the decisions. I was just happy to go along with the flow because I didn't really know what impact it was going to have. And but I was really, really happy with the way the game turned out. Like, even though it's sort of like with the level 3 and the level 2 sort of fairly close together, it's sort of, that was probably the one thing that if you were trying to balance it, you probably wouldn't have gone with. In fact, someone suggested just having all just level 2 thrones or all level 1 thrones,
Yeah.
and just leaving it that way. And I think that would have been a better decision as far as the game would have been concerned. But I really like this way this game turned out. Like the things that from the flow of it, like there were opportunities for, like we've spoken about the opportunities of Satisk getting the throne rush, Wadestar getting the throne rush. Sakwane. There was for a lot of the players, there were opportunities there to actually win the game. I think it was really great to actually have that low threshold, and it was, as I said earlier, like my main fear was that there was going to be a throne rush early on, which is sort of why I did try to get that initial thing against Lucid, because I thought that that's what he was going to be going for. And but yeah, it was for me. It was great. I just think that the level 3 was just a bit too unbalanced.
Go ahead, Lucid.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about it on the video, but one of the things I'll just say I think kind of one of the metas for multiplayer for Dominions right now is doing only level 2 thrones. With level 3 thrones, okay, well, level 1 thrones, you can take them basically as part of expansion, so there's no real tension about who's going to take them. You just kind of take them. With level 2 thrones, they're normally hard enough to take that they remain this contested border province, and it's, like this mid-game question, who's going to take the level 2 throne? So that's always kind of fun. And then level 3s, there's A, not that many of them, and then B, some of them are so hard, they're just debilitating to take. Like, some nations, they can't even really take them in the late game. So having all level 2 thrones is I think that's kind of one of the more popular game settings right now, and I really like it.
I think that'd be good.
Yeah. I thought the low threshold was fun. It made for, like everything Daz said, different people had different chances of winning. I thought that was really cool. I think the weird thing was having a mix of level 3s, 1s, and 2s. That, like, for me, I was near level 1, so I didn't really have, like, there's no shot of going for a throne victory. I'd have to beat, like, 4 or 5 people. So, I think having all level 2s, I think, would have been fun with a low threshold. But the level 1s, I think, kind of, they poison the soup bowl a little bit.
Yeah,
I know what you mean. It's a good insight.
Yeah, I agree with that. The 3-point throne was definitely, it was pure luck that it was by me. Had it been by anybody else, the whole game would have been different. I mean, the 3-point throne was definitely that kind of, like, it was that random roll of the dice and who was going to start next to it. Had it been next to you, Wade, you probably would have won earlier on. Had it been next to I mean, anybody that got that throne was probably going to hold it for the rest of the game, and it was definitely going to be a deciding factor. If it wasn't a deciding factor in determining who won based on thrones, it definitely would have probably been a deciding factor when the cataclysm struck.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yep. Good point.
And Sakane? Oh, did we lose Sakane?
No, he's still here.
Okay, go ahead.
I think he's gone into R2D2 mode.
Yeah. All right, Sakane. I'll go and then let's try Sakane again.
Spouse just gave the secret message.
Yeah. Hang on a sec, Sakane. I'll go ahead and speak, and then let's try you again and see if it improves in the meantime. I don't have a lot to say except, I listened to Lucid's thoughts, and one thing, Lucid, you brought up that I was a little bit more contentious about was also another meta about the throne settings, which is how people can win a game with the throne threshold being what it is without necessarily fighting against somebody else in the game. Because as it was, some of us didn't have a chance to fight Pythium at all. Or we didn't border each other. Like, I couldn't really fight Dwarf Comic at all. But I personally, and like the low threshold we had, because one, let me rephrase the question. I kind of like the game being about throne rushing, and not just not having such a high throne threshold that really winning the game is more like taking the thrones is more just a secondary thing from just conquering everybody else, kind of like a game of Risk style, conquer the world to win. But I think there's a lot of shades of gray in between that as well, and where on the spectrum this maybe falls for you and Sakane. But like I said, for me, I like it when the game can end before we start getting down to like a process of elimination where, half or more of the people that started in the game are out of the game. But on the other hand, that style of play reflects more of like what you see in like a tournament of any regular sport, where you have the brackets, you start out with like 10 teams and then each team gets knocked down to a bracket, and you only end up with first or fourth place, and the first and second place players play against each other to win the whole game, which is how I see some of the longer, bigger Dominions games go. And I'm thinking specifically of your Scalaria game, where I think at this point there's only 3 players in that game, but it started out with many more, and that's not quite what I prefer, and that's why I like the throne setting we did have in this
I agree
game.
It's one of those things where it does sort of keep pretty much everybody in the game, and that's also why I'm glad that the coalition actually fell apart when it did, because by that stage it's sort of done its job, and it still kept then, like Lucid then played a big role in the rest of the game, and if it like that could have descended into one of those sort of things where players could have been knocked out of the game, and that wouldn't have been as good for the game, I think.
To be fair, though, I was doing everything I could to knock Ulm out of the game. But
yeah, but he stayed in there right until the last couple of turns, and that for me, that's fine. Because he played big roles. Those assassins that came at the end there, that was a massive move, like, and stuff like that. It just I really loved the way the pace of this game. It was not the pace of our turns, but the actual the 40 turn limit, the throne rushing. It was all very, very good.
Let's hit. Did Sakane drop? I was going to just have him.
Yeah, no, he's gone. He's out. Battlemoose is in. Here he is.
Oh, Battlemoose is here. We were just talking about him. I sent him an email saying, join us later if you get a chance. We've been speaking bad about you this whole time.
The whole time. It hasn't stopped. It's the whole episode's been that.
I don't know if his mic is set up yet, though.
Oh, okay, hang on. Oh, wait, it says it's on. Are you here, Battlemoose? Speak.
No.
Drum roll.
Come back. You can blame
he did.
me.
We'll wait for him to say something. It'll come up. Like we'll sort of see it on the screen there.
Yeah, I'll pay attention. But anyway, that was my thought. Throne setting. But go ahead, Lucid.
Yeah, one thought on that. If you're thinking about like just generally the Dominions 5 meta for strategy, when you go with a throne rush setting like this, certain nations have kind of an extreme advantage. Like nations that can sail
Yeah.
And most importantly, nations that fly. Like if we had a flying nation like Kalem or Zabalba on a Throne Rush map, it can get kind of crazy. So anyway, but it is fun having it. I don't know if I've played a game before where the throne settings were so low that it's not about eliminating players, it's about really just getting thrones.
Yeah, and that's why I was wondering. I think we might have been on the extreme end of the throne rush kind of setting, and I realized that too with my strategy was that the sailing combined with our diplomacy settings really gave me an opportunity that I didn't have in the Middle Age game where we had out of game diplomacy, and that's kind of one other thing I wanted us to talk about as well is what our thoughts were with this form of diplomacy versus out of game included diplomacy. And I think we're still waiting on Battle Moose, but
just bounce in Battle Moose if you do get your microphone set up. I really like the diplomacy done this way, to be honest, even though it made it so much harder to actually get things organised. It forced, like Battle Moose's decision to attack Witchgrove or Witchguard or whatever it's called, back at 111. He had to make that decision without any diplomacy. And I know that would have been a hard decision. Like it must have been difficult at that time because at that stage we were, fully committed against Mictlan. And so I really liked that it forced that sort of decision, and I love that he actually made that decision because it was an important one to make. And so a lot of things like that where you always had to think 2 turns ahead, and you, like with each response, like you knew that you either had to act because you couldn't wait the 2 turns, or you basically had to wait the 2 turns, which then also screwed you up. And I know that I had a few moves where I just couldn't do anything because of the diplomacy 2-turn delay. I thought it was great. I really, really liked it.
Yeah, I want to caveat off that and say that I really enjoyed it too. That was definitely the correct way to do this run, because it made it a lot more tricky to try to plan yourself out or to even warn people of situations. I constantly remember, me and Chris were talking back and forth. I constantly remember saying, oh, well, by the time he sends the message to this person and that person gets the message and they start doing something, we're already going to be 2 turns ahead. So it really made it easier to kind of plan things out. And at the same time, though, it was also kind of difficult because if you needed to warn somebody of something or something was really pressing, you're kind of like, you can't really get it out in time. You're going to make a difference.
Or remind somebody to put flesh eaters on their thugs.
But no, I think I like the isolation but it really, I think it did aid in being able to be able to do surprise attacks and sort of to move a little bit more effectively, I think, in the actual game. So no, I thought that was an absolute win, as far as the series was concerned, actually having that diplomacy like that.
Why don't you go next, Lucid? I think Battle Moose might be about ready to jump in. I'm checking on my other computer with him on Discord.
Oh, I've already said my spiel on throne settings.
Not on throne settings, on diplomacy.
Diplomacy. Yeah, no, it was awesome. I like the in-game only.
Well, weren't you a bit skeptical at first about the diplomacy?
Well, I was. I think the problem that I was having was I think at the beginning, everybody was more theatrical with their messages, and it was harder to kind of suss out what everyone was saying. So, and I was more theatrical too. So I think when I became less theatrical...
Can I butt in? You're the only person out of all the videos that I've listened to where you actually managed to actually do an accent that worked with Wade Starr's diplomacy. And you only did it once.
I did it once.
It was amazing.
People were like, oh, that's awesome. And I was like, I'm never doing that again.
Who did the windbag one? The bag of wind?
Well, that was in my Pretenders title.
God, that was so funny. I was laughing so hard when you sent that message out to everybody.
Hello.
It is our most prized heirloom.
Is that Battle Moose?
Hello, I figured it out.
Yes. You're here.
Welcome in.
Yes. So is this the podcast or?
Yep.
Yep.
Say hello to the viewers real quick, Battle Moose. Remind them who you played.
Hello everyone. Yes, so I played Ulm. I backstabbed everybody and got crushed.
Battle Moose, you didn't backstab me, and that's the important thing.
It's nice to know I have some friends.
You did it. We were talking a bit there at the end. You did a really great job because I went radio silent on you during the game to reinforce my vendetta against you. But you did a really good job staying in the game the whole time until the very end, even though I was doing my damnedest to try to eliminate you. Well, Mictlan did the heavy lifting, obviously, but I was determined as much as anybody to try to get you out of the game.
Well, thanks for that, I guess. It was very interesting. I obviously had to change my goals from actually trying to win to just trying to survive, but I still had a lot of fun doing that.
Actually, there was a few questions that we would have had for you. We went through basically early game, mid-game, late game, and there were a few decisions that you had to make that were contentious, I guess. And so we were trying to guess what was behind your decisions. But it would be great to actually ask you those questions now and just get your feedback. So the first one was what prompted. Actually, the first one is probably really where you pulled back away from attacking. No, the first one is attacking Mictlan when you had an NA, like a non-aggression pact, and so I think that the question, like I think Lucid, you were wondering what the decision making was to actually go and break that nap at the start.
Yeah, sure. So I had a bad start. My early expansion was bad, and I just felt really far behind. And in the early enough turns, I was able to build up a fairly large, heavy cav, which group of Black Templars, which I knew was really strong. And I felt, just because the game was so short, that I really needed to move aggressively and expand and grow if I was going to have a chance of winning and fighting. So I needed to fight someone. And honestly, I was terrified of Lucid's Jaguar Warriors. And
That's all right.
I kind of felt that if we gave him any room to maneuver, we would just lose. And at some point, I just thought that there was going to be a fight with Lucid, or he would just win. So backstabbing him was definitely motivated by the fact that he had a strong bless. I knew he was a very strong player. Just try and dogpile him and try and stay in the game that way.
So specifically, why about not ending that? Because when you make a non-aggression pact 3, it usually means you give 3 turns warning before you attack. And you not giving me those turns warning before you attacked me after we made the non-aggression pact was really important for who I decided to attack after the coalition fell apart. So why did you not give me the turns warning, I guess, is what I was wondering.
To gain as strong an advantage as possible. The idea was to kill you, so if it made you upset, that shouldn't be relevant.
Well, I don't think he's questioning it on that level. I think...
Well, no, that answers my question. I guess if he thought that it would work, like if they definitely would kill me, then it was a gamble that, okay, I don't care about whether Lucid trusts me at all, right? If this gives me an advantage and we beat him, then it doesn't matter what he thinks of me. But then when the coalition fell apart, it kind of turned around on him, because I probably would have attacked somebody else.
At that point, I think I had already lost. I had to expand aggressively and win if I had a chance to win the game. That was my thinking. So it was either I had to aggressively... The idea that I could win if the coalition fell apart just didn't really enter my mind.
Well, and the other thing, too, is I think if it hadn't been combined with the attack on me in Witchgrove, it may have panned out differently, because that was also what contributed to me jumping on your back as well. And I don't know how much damage I did to you, but I was trying to do as much as I could. And
but Battlemoose had no choice. He had to attack. He had no choich.
Well,
yeah. Let's hear from him. What was your thoughts?
Because that's something we were asking ourselves.
With Witchgrove, it was tricky. It was just such a surprise. It was such an aggressive move on your part that the only way it made thought in my mind was that if a throne rush was critically imminent, and I wasn't ready for the game to end.
Yeah, and I wish that was something that I'd done with you diplomatically better, because
I don't think it would have worked. I don't think no matter what you would have said, none of us would have let you have taken that province.
Well-
Yeah, I don't think there's anything you could have said.
yeah, I wish I'd tried still, regardless, because my intention fully was not that I was going to keep that. I was just going to take it short term until the whole thing with Mictlan had panned out. But again, we didn't ever get to have that conversation.
It would have been a resounding no from everybody, I think. Like everyone in that coalition, it would have.
I wouldn't have asked everybody in the coalition. It would have just been between me and Ulm.
The big question I have is what happened with Utgard and I seen you before and his fighting with Lucid. Do we have any idea what that was all about?
Well, you mean the war
styled.
just stalled out because that was when he was dropping out of the game.
I can give you a quick fill-in. So he was attacking me, and I basically told him, hey, just keep a big army that's going to come in and siege down my forts. Let me keep my cap circle for now, but you keep that army ready, and I'm going to fight and kill Ulm and Man's armies, and then when my armies are depleted from that, come in and finish me off. So he pulled back. He actually moved back towards his fort, I think to Flossy Fields, 101. And then after that, he staled twice, and that's when Sequani took over. So.
Okay, so there was you got an agreement with Utgard after I backstabbed you.
Yeah, I was like, I had not much land, but I had some big armies, and I was basically saying, just let me spin my armies on the people who backstabbed me, and then you get all my stuff.
Yeah,
but
sure.
That's also when I seen you before actually started to stall the turns as well anyway. So
yeah.
That was your assumption. Our assumption was the coalition was falling apart. And I don't think you had any spies. You didn't see me attacking.
He did
Mictlan,
move back one turn, though, because he was in Lone Pines, I think, and then moved back to Flossy Fields.
Okay.
I was actually super unsure about the coalition against you. It was very weak and not very well communicating. So I was very nervous about the whole situation. But it was that one battle that my scouts saw between you and Utgard. Like there's an actual fight. I think I forget who won, but damage was dealt, and Utgard. I think Utgard did win, but he didn't kill that much. But you were fighting, and if I hadn't seen that battle, I would not have backstabbed you.
Huh. Interesting.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's a good point actually, because Utgard did. He was the first one to draw blood, wasn't it? And then we were counting down while you were getting your Templars ready before we were then going to attack as well. So, but it's all started pretty fast because Utgard sort of fell into that battle to start with.
Yeah, and I now that I'm thinking about it, I recall it seemed to me that Ulm was going to have a very effective army against Mictlan originally. Like I said, I was really convinced at a certain point that, like, I pivoted from being very worried about Mictlan to being very worried about Mictlan getting crushed. And yeah, similar to what Lucid said, after I lost my big army at Witchgrove, I kind of went into revenge mode.
Yeah, I was definitely going to lose a 3v1. There was no question in my mind. But I knew I had enough forces left that I could kill Man and Ulm, and that became the mini game I had set for myself.
Yeah, similarly to me. Yeah.
One question that I have for Lucid is that, like, I totally get the vengeance aspect against me. Like, I totally get that. But do you feel that maybe you could have won if you had gone for thrones instead?
Not really, actually. I mean, there's no thrones near me. If I completely conquered Utgard, and I got Moss Flowers, and I got Drake's Rest, and then I also got Iridescent Sheen, that would have been a lot of throne points. That would have been 4, in addition to having Witchgrove, and that would have been 6. And then I maybe could have snuck one from Pangea. That would have been... But I would have had to have completely conquered Utgard. Like everything. And that would have been hard to do. And if during that time the coalition that I was just a victim of turned around on me again, which they certainly would have if I went all in on Utgard, I wouldn't have had anything to defend my stuff. Because they would have been like, oh, he's getting all the thrones. So going after you, I knew Utgard was going to pick a fight somewhere else. I also knew I couldn't really trust you because you had broken your nap with me. So when I went after you, it was safe that the coalition was going to just accept that you were going to fall on your sword. And it still opened me up to a few thrones. It opened me up to 130, and it opened me up to 20, and then potentially to 24, which was the inner throne. So that's still, it was just barely in time for turn 40 where I might have gotten all that, but, there were thrones near you. They weren't in your possession, but...
Yeah, if you've taken...
Makes sense.
Because he was also mentioning when you were off camera that after taking you, and since I wasn't able to claim hardly any of your territory permanently, he would have been in a good position to go after the inner throne and go after my 2-point throne next.
Yeah, this just wasn't enough time.
Yeah.
But anyway, what the topic we're on right now was kind of the in-game diplomacy, and so I'll just go ahead and add one more thing in because I think it's relevant to this point as well. Is one thing I liked about it is that it does sow chaos and it does undermine kind of like best intentions, and like I think breaking of naps is another thing that contributes to that. I think out of game diplomacy. When you have out-of-game diplomacy, I think naps are a lot more firm and concrete, and because you can double-check. You can always double-check things, right? And that was one other thing I liked about this was I'm not negging on non-aggression pacts and kind of the gentleman's agreement that I think the professional or the more experienced Dominions community has with them. But what I liked about the in-game is that it does undermine even the potential of having non-aggression pacts be as solid as they are otherwise. And you can have wars erupt for reasons that aren't anybody's fault. Like I mentioned this once on Luce's channel, but he sent a message where he said Midgard instead of Utgard. And depending on how the person read that message, they would have been like, wait, you're saying Midgard's about to attack me? Well, screw their nap. I'm going to attack them. Like that, but that's just an example of what I actually kind of like is that it's a way to keep things from being too what's the word? Static.
Well, it keeps the players isolated. It's I don't know about you guys, but when you're playing the game, you feel so isolated. It doesn't translate in the videos or anything, but God, it's a lonely game, isn't it? and I think that those diplomacy things really that accentuates that sense of isolation, because you make decisions based on that isolation as well. Like once again, going back to Battle Moose, when you pulled out of the war against Mictlan, you felt that you were on your own. I think at that stage, and
I knew I couldn't win a 1v1 with Lucid. My only hope was he would choose not to follow me.
Yeah, because at that stage I was still attacking at the south, but you didn't have spies. I saw you couldn't see what I was doing. So when you pulled out, it was like, okay, well, it's completely over and done with that stage. So I pulled out at the same time. But but I think that the decisions that are made from that sense of isolation are. I know that I made a lot of decisions based on feeling like I was actually sort of sitting inside a vacuum, and it was in hindsight you think, geez, I wish I had done this, that, or this. I find that really fascinating,
and it contributes to paranoia.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely.
Speaking of breaking naps, you might not know this, but I actually also had a nap with Dwarf Comic, which I also broke.
Huh.
So you did attack him?
No, just kidding.
Yeah, I did attack him, and Dwarf Comic accused everyone, but then I immediately attacked Lucid almost a turn thereafter, and it's like, oh no, Battlemoose is trustworthy against Lucid at least.
Yeah, we actually, Ulm and I had an agreement to attack Pangea, and I was going to help him, probably to the benefit of Satis, but I didn't commit to that, which I'm glad I didn't, because Utgard had just an enormous pile of troops on my border, and I wasn't going to start a war until I knew what Utgard wanted to do.
Yeah, that was a very awkward decision time for me, because I was either going to attack Pangea or Mictlan, and yeah, I've watched your videos, and you talked a lot about it, but it just seemed like you had no intention of actually attacking Pangea, and the reasons were good. It was just a battle that I saw with you and Utgard that made the decision for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, it's funny that decision, because I'm thinking now back to the very start of the game with the when I saw the blessed troops. And as Sakwane had said before he had to drop out, he did sort of say that bless is only really good in early game, which at the time I also then thought, okay, this is a rush strategy. And so that's why I think we had to dogpile. Like, that certainly was, when I saw those sacreds, it was like, oh my God, this is going to be just a really one-sided game.
Let's hear from Sabouts if he's still here.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So you've been following along, I hope, and yeah, just kind of your thoughts on how the diplomacy was this time around compared to Middle Age.
Well, I mean, so we changed the rules, right, with the diplomacy, and I think that had a very
and did you misunderstand that as being that you can't send any messages at all since you didn't?
Yeah, so you can't send any messages to anybody at all. No, I decided to actually be to play a little bit more conservative this game personally myself with the diplomacy. I did mean to message Nook back that in the beginning of the game, but that just didn't happen. And then I had a little bit of fluid conversation with Das. I didn't message you back, Wade, but that was because there wasn't a whole lot to say. I could tell you were very upset.
I know.
About
yeah.
everything that was happening.
What were you going to say?
I was like, I'm not going to throw any brush on that fire. I'm just going to let it kind of do its thing over there. Me and Ulm had we had I think a brief message back and forth on kind of where our borders were, and then that was the end of that. At one point, I believe, Battlemoose, you reached out to me.
But a little bit. There was a province I wanted. You said no, that was fine. Look, for most of the game, your presence, there was no interaction between either of us, and then you won.
You know, that was the tricky part with my situation, right? I was kind of, because of all the water around me, I was kind of closed off from everybody. So I only shared 2 natural borders, one with three natural borders technically, one with Dwarf Comic. I had one or two provinces connected to Ulm, but he was very, very focused on Mictlan and Midgard and all that going on. And then I had Satis. So there was very little reason for me to reach out and communicate with a whole lot of people during the game, because I just didn't really share any natural borders with anybody. So there was no like, hey, let's do a nap, let's do alliance, let's gang up. Like I wasn't a part of the alliance that ganged up on Mictlan because there was no way I could have participated in a war like that.
You're kind of like the USA, surrounded by friendly neighbors and protected from everybody else with a huge ocean.
Yeah, that's really how it was. I didn't hear from anybody until eventually, Wade's attempt to go for the victory, and then that's when I started hearing from Das. Actually, Das, it was you that reached out to me initially, and you were like, "Hey, I'm almost positive that's the 3-point throne next to you," which I had my assumptions that it was, based off of just the force that was guarding it. What I knew with the independent force guarding it, that it was the 3-point throne. But that was when, I think I had actually my first real conversation with anybody in the game. And that was probably probably around like turn 18 or 19, somewhere in that.
Yeah, it was all around that time. Wadestar sent a scout. I had a scout in that province, and then I wasn't sure whether you'd seen it. So that's when I thought, I better get you aware of that he's going to go for that one.
I did actually catch that scout too. That's how I knew he was also planning to go for it. Is there any reason why you didn't actually go for that throne?
Well, somebody destroyed my army.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So you would have definitely have beelined straight to it.
I wanted to also get some research up because I had to figure out how to deal. And looking back, I could have probably done it more effectively if I were to play the game again. But I was trying to figure out how to deal with the lightning troops, because I basically could only go in with my vans, and I just needed a solution to it. And I was kind of thinking I wanted to get fog warriors before I went into that province. So, but I don't think that's actually true in hindsight, but it was true for my skill level when I was playing, or my knowledge level at least. But I couldn't move I couldn't really move much of a conventional arm without, like I said, the shock resistance. I didn't really have anything for my army yet. and I didn't have any other survivability really. I wasn't confident I could beat it.
Okay, that makes sense then. Yeah, that makes total sense.
But yeah, I was stalling on it. I was stalling to make the move. But one other thing I wanted to toss out to you guys regarding our diplomacy as well that I liked in particular this time around is, and Lucid, you and Sakane would have more to say on this, I think, too. I like that it doesn't give. I feel like it levels the playing field quite a bit in that I feel, especially with Daz, where I was kind of in a war to out diplomacy him, which I think Daz is just more effective at getting people on his side than I am. Although again, that's partly the way we were role playing, I think, too. But one thing I like is I think when you have out of game diplomacy, it gives a distinct advantage to players who have enough time to spend in real life communicating with people on various Steam channels and on chat servers and so on and so forth. And what I liked about the in-game diplomacy is it levels the playing field for people who either don't have such a strong connection in the community quite yet, or people who are just working too much to be able to respond to messages as quickly as somebody who is on vacation, or somebody who has more time on their hands. And I can say in my case too, like I have a lot less time to play to write emails than I did, for example, when I was playing in the Middle Age. And I know that Sabouts, your schedule also in the Middle Age, at one point you were staling turns because your work life was getting in the way.
Yes.
And so I just wanted to say that's the thing I like about it, is that it means that there's not that advantage to people who have the time for the diplomacy. That's what I wanted to toss out there and see what you guys felt. But go ahead, Battle Moose. Any thoughts on that?
One of the big things I think was that if we were able to communicate out of game, it would have been much, much easier to have organized the proper coalition against Lucid.
Maybe.
And
I would agree.
I mean, I would have been venomous with. I mean, my strategy, I would have killed one of you or two of you where y'all had a chance of winning. And it would have been more clear if I could have talked to you in real life.
We would have been able to thrash out all sorts of things, like toing and froing with different sorts of things. I think I agree with Battle Moose. I think it would have been much easier to gang up if we were out of game. And I'm glad that we weren't out of game, to be honest. I'm glad that it was all in game, because for that very reason, it really added a whole other veneer of complexity to the game, which is good.
I think it would also been much harder to be deceptive like that, because when you're in game and you're doing it, you're still kind of in a character and you're in a game. But if you're talking to someone like on Steam about what you're going to do and how you're going to betray them in a Steam conversation, I kind of feel that would amplify the betrayal.
Yeah. That's something that I think dovetails with why I've talked to some of my viewers and why we talked in previous podcasts, why I like kind of role playing, to put just an extra level, just to put an extra barrier between my personal human feelings and attitudes towards the people I'm playing with versus, my attitudes just, I want to be contained within the game itself.
Yeah, you can be evil. You can be evil in diplomacy, and not be that way in real life. And I think that by splitting it up that way, it certainly makes it much, much better.
What was especially nice about it too was the fact that we had brought this up before, is that the viewers sometimes didn't get to see our email interactions. I know, Das, you put a lot of effort into showing that, but a lot of us, we didn't have the time or the patience to show off. So there's some really good email conversations in the last two series that we had done that the viewers never really got a chance to see that, or you would have to come into your particular turn explaining to the viewers in your videos, what happened in the background during email or Steam conversations.
Well, and our entire Discord conversation between me and Sabouts, where I was trying to formulate a strategy to just keep Tortuga from winning, that was definitely never in the series.
But that was debilitating, trying to keep up and trying to communicate that to the as you said, Wade Star, This was so much better on that score. Like it was, and being able to copy paste in as well. Like I don't know about you guys. I think that most of you guys typed it straight into the actual thing, but I just kept a text file basically of everything that I was going to write, copy paste in, and away you go. It was great.
Yeah, I typed everything on the fly because that contributed to the tone I had decided upon.
Please don't do that again, Waitstar. Never again.
If we do a blitz, though, I think there's a way where we can record like if you have the Discord overlay. I'm not sure. I think there's a way where you can get the recording software to actually pick up on the overlay as well. So that would be kind of fun because then people could see us actually, typing messages. It wouldn't be like hidden in Discord. Yeah. It would be there for people to see.
Well, Lucid, do you have any thoughts? And then let's go ahead and move on to that discussion about what we want to do next time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for the speed thing, I think like new players that join in games that I'm in, which is not you guys, but like guys who are like on their first or second game, a lot of times they think diplomacy is important, so I need to be diplomacying people all the time, and it can be a little annoying. And what I have found with diplomacy is you only need it at certain times. So, like, I mean, you can see that Pythium won without doing much Diplo at all, and a few times he did do Diplo where, like, oh yeah, I'm helping to beat back Satis because I'm worried about him doing a throne rush, and that was really effective diplomacy. Like, I bought that. Yeah, you don't have to do Diplo all the time to do good Diplo. So, it can take, if you're doing Diplo outside of the game, like probably for most of my games, I don't message people that much. If you're trying to hold a coalition together, it helps to do more Diplo. But I would say in general, you don't need to do that much for it to work. So, can you do out-of-game Diplo without becoming time debilitating? I think, absolutely you can.
Well,
but
I think
it's a good point.
And it's not necessarily just the debilitation of like trying to share it with viewers, but I think for me, it would be harder to compete with somebody who has the resources available to do out-of-game diplomacy.
Well, let me put it this way to you, Waitstar. Like, think about the messages that you sent out. You sent out a lot. Think about which ones of those were actually really important for influencing what other people did. Wasn't
actually,
really that many.
If I can just butt in there, there is actually another veneer on this on top of, like, Waitstar plays the game, but he also is like the dungeon master as such. And so I know that a lot of the communication, and I think that's probably where Waitstar, you haven't been impacted as much in this game. And I think a lot of that is to do because it's the in-game diplomacy. There hasn't been as many questions to you as the game controller. I don't think so anyway. Like I'm assuming that the middle game and the early game, you were actually answering as much out of character stuff about the game as you were actually in character. Whereas I'm guessing that dried up in this episode, in this series.
Asking questions from who?
Oh, just from everybody. Like basically there was, I know that even with our conversation, there was a lot of out of character conversation, and then we'd go into character to do specific diplomacy bits, and it was really, it became really debilitating trying to sort of, as you say, it was so time consuming. And with you actually having that dual role as a player plus the control of the game as such, I think that the burden is doubly for someone in that sort of capacity.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with that. I don't think it is directly addressing what Lucid was trying to say either. I think though, Lucid, to your point, I'm not sure that my point stands for this exact game we just had, but I do think that if we'd had discussions, and not necessarily just between you and me, but if I'd had discussions with the other guys, there would have been a lot more time spent having to argue about, what to do. And so, like, for example, you wouldn't have necessarily been included in this, but in dealing with the coalition that formed against you, I think there would have been a lot more time necessary for all of us outside the game. And in that case, I don't know. I mean, this doesn't exactly address what I was trying to say either. I guess my point about people having an advantage using outside diplomacy isn't necessarily relevant to this particular game. It's just one that I personally would see when I watch like some of your games. Actually, that's what I probably should have said, is when I'm watching, my opinion's based on watching how you do diplomacy in some of your other games, where you talk about being able to arrange things with the person off camera. And I feel like there's some things like diplomatic kerfuffles that can be smoothed over, but require you to have to speak outside the game. And I'm not sure.
I'll just say, like, I don't spend that much time doing diplomacy outside.
Yeah, and I have to concede that point.
Yeah.
I haven't tried.
Like, here's an example of another game I was in. Abyss. We're fighting this Ryla, which is an underwater nation that's going to take over the world, and two of us are in this coalition fighting them, and the third person is Abyssia, and they're basically the Wade Star of that game, and they're sitting on the sideline and watching the other two people do all the work, and. So my diplomacy for that was just, I sent him a message telling him I'm ending my non-aggression pact with him and I'm going to attack him because his lands right now are doing nothing to help with the Rylan war. So I'd better put them to good use under my ownership. And then next turn he says, okay, I'm attacking Rylan. He attacks him. Like, it took me like 30 seconds, to send that message.
Yeah, I can see that point. Yeah, it's
I had talked with him for 20 turns.
But what makes it difficult, I think, in our situation is that we are playing as YouTubers and we're recording. Yeah. So we've got a bigger responsibility than if it's just us. I don't know if that makes sense, but
no, it totally does.
And I think that in that sense, the diplomacy is important because you don't want to inject who you are into the decisions that you're making. You want that to be one step removed because you are doing it publicly, I think.
And I'm also glad that we're debating it too, because it wouldn't be very meaningful if we all just kind of agreed on my point either. And that's why I wanted to bring it up too, because I do have only 3 multiplayer games worth of experience. So
in terms of quality of life, what I really appreciated was you got the turn, and that is all the information you're going to get. You can't take time to reach out to anyone or send an email or clarify. There's no other activities that you have to do before you get the turn done. All the information you have is there, and you just got to do it.
Yeah. And I think that's that's a good way to rephrase what I was trying to say. But I do take Lucid's point as well, where it's like, well, but if it only takes 30 seconds to send a Steam message to somebody, is it really that big of an investment outside of the game, or is it really that big a thing that not everybody would be able to do? So
I still think it is because at least we're playing in terms. We're looking at the diplomacy when we're ready. We're not being distracted. For me, I really liked doing it this way. It was.
Go ahead after Daz. Sabouts, anything you want to say?
No, I think you guys covered it. I really do.
Yeah, but it's something to still experiment with. But and then Lucid, I'll let you finish with anything you wanted to. Before we go ahead and talk about segueing into what to do with, for example, a potential kind of blitz game setup, because that is directly related to like how diplomacy would pan out there as well.
No, let's go ahead and start talking about the blitz.
Yeah. So the one thing you mentioned that was interesting was the ability to send the in-game messages during the blitz. And the other thing I would think about a blitz where we're all on the same channel is we end up being more like a board game. And that's what I'm kind of used to as far as diplomacy in games goes, is I'm used to when I play multiplayer games, the majority of them have been board games where basically all the diplomacy is open and it's all verbal, and you see the coalition being formed against you because they're doing it right in front of you with the other person, and you have to interject and say, what are you doing listening to this guy? But the thing that I think gets added to this game that would be interesting is it's more like the game diplomacy itself, where part of the rule set is that you have the open table diplomacy, but then you're allowed a certain amount of time to go and talk to people in other parts of the room and to write down messages and hand them over to each other. And that's what I would like the most about a diplomacy in a blitz game, is that there really isn't going to be anything hidden from the viewers except hidden because they're watching somebody's channel and it's player B and C who are having a secret diplomacy while they're watching player A.
But what you could do is actually just have a two-team disciple game, and just have two different voice areas in Discord, with each team in their own Discord. That way you'd actually that way you wouldn't have to even think about diplomacy.
Yeah.
If we're playing Blitz.
Yeah, like a 3v3 or something would be fun.
Yeah. Yep. And just 3 versus 3, each in their own areas. Maybe after 10 turns, we all get together, have a quick talk, and then back out to our teams again. Just a little something like that. That way we could play, that way the Blitz would be faster. There would be no diplomacy other than just like the team figuring out what's what, and then sort of moving through from there. And I think that what would be interesting from me in that sort of aspect would be that, like as somebody who's not a really strong player, you'd actually be learning a hell of a lot about the game from, like, if you had like a couple of strong players in each team, then you'd end up learning a lot as well, and there'd be a lot of discussion. It'd be good to record as well, because you'd be talking about deeper aspects of the game in a very quick sort of fashion.
Well,
I think it'd be really cool.
Whatever we do, we can't do it the same way we did it this time. We've done this 3 times now, and each time we try something different, and each time we see things that didn't go right for us this time, and one of those being how long it still took us to play our turns with the 6-day turn interval. So we would definitely have to change that, even if we don't do a blitz per se, because even if we do a blitz, it might be one of those things where it's like, well, we end up having to play it at an arranged time, for 2 hours on a given day, because what if the game doesn't end within a 2-hour limit on a blitz, which, is probably about the length you would want for a live stream, but I'm speculating here.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, for mine, I broke it up into, when I've done blitzes, like I have a little record key, and I didn't do it live streaming, but it's just every 30 minutes I toggle to a new episode when a turn rolls. And it's so, I mean, just from a creating content perspective, it's so much more efficient than all the turn-based games. It slows down when you're doing real time and you go into like the deep late game, so that doesn't really happen. You want to do throne settings so the game ends faster, but God, it's so efficient. Like, you spend 3 hours playing a game and you get like 10 episodes to put up. Normally it would be like almost an hour an episode in terms of the time to play a turn and to put it up for me. So way more efficient than normal.
Yeah, and don't blitz games, isn't there a way, even if we are doing like open chat, talking over each other on Discord or whatnot, isn't there a way to set a time limit within which you have to submit the turns?
Yeah, it's normally like 5 minutes per turn.
Yeah. And is that adjustable when you do get into the late game? So, because the later turns, there's so much more time if you have like more than one death ball army, and if you have to do more scripting for your spells and such.
Yeah, you can adjust it and on the fly. It's a little clunky, but it's not too hard.
Cool. Yeah, we got to talk about some of that off camera, but we can still share some of our thoughts here for our viewers. But that's what I really would like to try next time too, because like I said, we can't. Or for me personally, I don't want us to get into yet another, how many months has this been? 9-month game, which after our middle-age game, we swore we would never do again, but we did it again.
What nation would you guys play if we did a blitz off the top of your head?
Well, what age would we play? Well, yeah, age independent. If you get to have whatever age you want. Go ahead and answer, starting with Battle Moose.
I've been thinking about Lumeria. I think that looks interesting to me, but I'd have to give it a lot more thought.
Yeah, from my perspective, something easy, something simple. So as long as it's sort of, as long as I can instinctively understand it, then probably one of the giant races or something like that. I always quite like playing those. I've actually got to get going fairly soon, guys. So,
okay. Well, let's finish answering this question, then say our goodbye.
I'd probably take a shot at Daz's Nation. Late age man. Be fun.
Spouts, any thoughts?
No, I have no idea, actually. I'd have to go back through and look at them all.
I think I would still like to try early age Calacia.
Oh.
The Monkey Nation.
Oh, yeah. Those are fun.
But anyway, we're going to wrap up the podcast here. So thanks, everybody, for watching and listening to us ramble. Let's just go ahead and say our goodbyes once again. So I'm Wade Starr. I played Midgard, and thank you everybody for all the comments you left on my video. And sorry if my infallible or if my fallible memory caused me to say some things that were inaccurate in our podcast here. But anyway, I got to say my piece. How about you, Battle Moose?
I just want to say thank you for everyone who endured with me to the bitter end of the destruction of Elm.
Not quite destruction.
Not quite. Technically, I survived.
Yeah, filled those walls up with toads, though.
And I'm Daz Tactic, and I was playing as Man, so I thoroughly enjoyed it. And thanks, guys, for playing the game. It was a very, very enjoyable game. It was, I love the progress of the game, and I love the way it finished with Spouts winning it the way that he did, with one turn to go. It couldn't have been better. It was just a really great game, really great series.
Thanks to all of y'all who have made it to the end of this rather long podcast, and certainly enjoyed playing, and hats off to Spouts for, again, a heroic victory with Late Age Pythium. Never before done that I know of. So, cheers.
Yeah, it's Spouts. I played Pythium. Yeah, thanks, guys. Seriously, it was a lot of fun. It happened in a way that I think nobody expected, and I think that's what we all wanted. It would have been too expected if somebody just got in there, thrown, rushed, and won. So it was really just all unexpected. And I also want to take just 1 second to do a surprise thank you to Chris, because Chris Lightheart, he taught me a lot about the game, and he was my very faithful advisor. So I feel like he definitely deserves a thanks for that. But thank you to all for making it to the podcast, and thank you guys for the game.
All right. And remember, everyone, please go back, if you haven't already, and watch everybody's perspective at your leisure. There's a lot more to get out of the game, even though you've probably seen it go through once already. And remember to like and subscribe to everybody. All right. Thank you, guys. Talk to you in the next game.
Cheers.